All right, how's everybody doing? I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Prudential Committee at Hiawatha Elementary on the 8th of December. 6:30. And the first item of business is visitors and staff to be heard. Anyone extra? No? Okay. And we'll go right into our principal's reports. And since we're here at Hiawatha, we will open up the floor to Principal Bochansky.
Okay, thank you, Mike. On behalf of our children and staff and families here at Hiawatha, we would absolutely welcome you to your December Prudential Committee meeting. I know this is something, a tradition that was started by the PC a couple, 3 years ago, and I know it's sometimes awkward to meet after school, and it's hard to fit all those meetings in, but I think our faculty, our staff, I think our community really appreciates your effort in making connections, not just here at Hiawatha, of course, but also at Summit and Fleming and ADL. So thank you for being here. So this is the third year that we've done this. The first year we had our grade level and specialist teams present their grade level goal. Last year, if you recollect, it was an incredibly, I thought, heavy-duty slide presentation that contained way too much information. And you know, every year is a busy year here at Hiawatha. We do so much, and we tackle so many things. We try to accomplish so much. And I think last year I was really trying to give the Prudential Committee a taste of how amazingly complicated this undertaking is. That said, in reflecting, it was too much. And I respect the board and the time that you all have. And you know, I thought after reflecting that we need to scale it back down again. So we're back to where we were 3 years ago, where really the focus of this afternoon, the time with our faculty and staff, is for them to share with you at least one part of their work. This isn't all that they do, of course, but this is certainly, I think we all hope, emblematic of the amazing work that they all do. So you will all have access to this Google presentation, and I will do that ASAP. The top part of it contains several slides with data. In going over some of the slides with my faculty, at one point I was thinking there's too much information in there yet again. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the data slides. I thought, let me keep them in there because they do represent a lot of our work. We're not perfect at data analysis and data collection. And in spite of a lot of good work over the years, I think we still have room for improvement in terms of analyzing our student performance data. I'm confident that by our continued effort we'll get there. But I kept the slides in there because they do indicate what we're trying to accomplish and achieve in terms of our work around data collection, data review, and certainly the analysis of that data. If you have any specific questions, just like with the principal's report, please don't hesitate to give me a shout back, and then I could further explain or illustrate, what have you, some things that might be nuanced that you might not capture in the incredibly quick overview. So we'll do a quick review of the data slides, and then we're really going to jump into our grade level and specialist goals. Kim? Everything is really predicated on our overall school action plan target. This is something that the board, of course, did adopt this past June. And these are 2016 performance targets that are really based on the first and second year administration of the SBAC. And at our last faculty meeting, we actually talked a little bit about, it's not just about math and science. So as you would find in our school action plan, in addition to the performance targets, we also have outcomes. And one of the outcomes, of course, is a safe and healthy, respectful learning environment that really transcends all of our classrooms, all of our learning places. We certainly wanted to include that in there as well. So this is a graph that I have shared with the Prudential Committee a number of times. I like it because it really shows the trend over the past 9 years that we've been collecting data here at Hiawatha. So from the left, that first bunch of vertical bars represents our overall number of kids actually taking the kneecap. And then again, I know it's difficult to see from this point, but the trend line for kneecap reading scores, kneecap math scores, disaggregated scoring in terms of our free and reduced lunch population, and then at the end, just the number of kids who are taking the assessment as free and reduced lunch students. So you can see everything is kind of trending in a good way. There are a couple of blip years in 2011, 2012, certainly for reading, for literacy, and that's the fourth set of vertical bars going in from the left. And again, if you want to sit down and talk about why we think that might be happening, we can certainly do that. Certainly for the first several years is an incredibly nice step in the right direction, and we certainly are challenging ourselves to sort out some of those nuanced reasons as to why that didn't continue, why the step back, why the fall back. Actually, our kindergarten and first grade teams have a joint goal this year that really speaks to the questioning that is unfolding here at Hiawatha in terms of what's going on with student learning. The thing, of course, about this particular type of data review is that these are non-cohort analyses. So these are non-cohort comparisons, and we're tackling that question too. And the new learning system, the new admin-informed learning system software that's being brought on board through Amy's work and through Kim's work and through the central office leadership really is going to help us move away from non-cohort comparison really to an individual longitudinal look at how kids are doing. I think that will be very helpful. So again, same data, different look. This shows in the salmon color how all of our kids are doing versus the purple color in the forefront about our free and reduced lunch kids. And that's 9 years, over 9 years. Kind of interesting looking at it differently. That's in mathematics. I'm sorry, that was in literacy and math. And this is just a quick snapshot using an area chart of this September's literacy data. And there's actually 5 different assessments there, ranging from the kindergarten PASS, which is the phonological awareness skill survey, if I got that right, to the letter name assessment in K, that's the second K, vertical axis, and then first grade, second grade, and third grade, Fontaines and Pinnell text level scores. So you notice that the gap in first grade, that's the middle axis, and then there's a slight gap at the very right side of the graph. That's third grade, and we're really tackling why is that happening, like what's going on there. So, Tim, if you go back one, so if you took just the kids who represent that very right-hand vertical axis, which is all the third grade kneecap scores, and you just took those kids and you tried, okay, go to the next slide, and you parsed out all their individual scores, this is what we got. And we also took out all the kids who have not been with us over the last couple, 3 years. That's the other problem with cohort data is that you're looking at different groups of kids every year. Some of the kids may not have been with you for any measurable time to realize any effect on their student performance or progress. What we did was we took a look at our 55 third graders that we had in September of this year. We took out the 11, 12 kids who just joined us coming in from summer 2014, and we found that about a quarter of those kids, so we were down to about 45 kids, so about 10 of those kids or so were not meeting the beginning of third grade benchmark. And looking at a number of those kids, we found that a number of them actually made the benchmark at the end of grade 2, but not at the beginning of grade 3. And so the question that I'm thinking about, and I really haven't had an opportunity to fully vet this with our second and third grade team colleagues, was summer regression. This is something that we're actively talking about with our kindergarten, our joint K and first grade team. So there's our math data. So we did not do the CBM, which stands for Curriculum-Based Measure, math assessment for kindergarten. So this is just first grade, second grade, and third grade. And second grade looks really super duper awesome because there's hardly any gap there. The problem with the easy CBM is that we're not really sure it aligns with our newly adopted Common Core math standards. So we're somewhat skeptical of the easy CBM math assessment results. And I know that under Amy's leadership, we're actively looking at some other math assessments throughout the SSHO. And each principal's report that I submit to the school board, I include some behavior data. And this is just really a summative look for the end of the first trimester. The data tells a story. Again, looking at the story behind the story or the story behind the data, you would understand why you see some of those huge discrepancies. Certainly in grade 1 and grade 3, I think a valid story that is told by the graph on the left is that many of our kids now, because of the hard work of our faculty, are into behavior programs and incentive programs which allow them to use our time away workroom, our alternative workspace, in a very positive, proactive way. So here in December 2014, we're still really utilizing that alternative workspace, but on a positive note for earned, proactive reasons versus us as adults reacting to the student misbehavior. And again, there are some real legitimate reasons for what's going on in grade 1 there. This is, I threw this in. I was actually very encouraged by this slide. So again, working through Amy's office and through Kim Gaywar, we were able to actually take a look at the spring 2014 fourth grade science kneecap scores. We parsed out just the Hiawatha kids. So these are Hiawatha kids 2 years out, this spring 2015. So in other words, they left here 2 years ago, this coming spring, right? And 440 is the benchmark. So 440 is where children are proficiency in terms of the concepts that are found in this particular version of the fourth grade science kneecap. So look at the huge cluster around 440. There certainly are some kids to the left of the graph that we need to better support in terms of differentiation or what have you. But certainly, I actually looked at the individual scaled scores. Quite a few kids were scoring 438 and 439. Just missed being proficient. So we have a lot of kids who are partially proficient, and over half of our kids are proficient, at least compared to that assessment, which of course we know changes from year to year. So I thought that was actually some good news compared to the whole statewide debate around science learning and science assessment. And I think that's it. I'm going to stop, and we're going to have our pre-K team come up and. Or yeah, why don't you stand, or why don't you come up to the table?
Up here? Yeah, microphone would be great. For one of the side.
I'm not sure if both of these are supposed to be
And I know we have a number of teams, and we're going to try, I know we're going to try really hard to keep things at around 3 or 4 minutes. And I would like to remind the board again that as part of our work here, as a professional learning community at Hiawatha, every year, every one of our grade level and specialist teams develops a team goal. There are some faculty members, given their particular circumstance in a given year, may do a self-directed, which is independent, but most all of us embrace the supervision and evaluation process on a team basis.
Hi, I'm Lori Riddell. I'm the early childhood special educator for Essex Junction and this building.
Cindy Capistella, I'm a speech language pathologist specifically for the early ed programs here in Hiawatha and Summit.
So we are very excited about our goal this year and our work with Tom. He had some wonderful suggestions for a longer term project. This started this fall because we noticed that there were some children in our classroom here at Hiawatha who were not on IEPs, were not diverse ability learners, who were really struggling with their social skills. They were having difficulty recognizing that another child was playing with a material at a table, or having trouble just sitting next to another child during circle time or during an activity. And as we all know, this is not just something that impacts pre-kindergarten. And we are concerned for these children as they head into kindergarten and interact with a larger group of children and how it will impact their learning later on. Because as we all know, the social curriculum is as essential as the academic curriculum. So in talking with our pre-kindergarten colleague, Shelley Underwood at Summit, she had accessed Ashley Wageman at Summit, who had a curriculum called The Incredible Flexible You, which is a social thinking curriculum. It was put out in 2013 by Michelle Garcia Winner, who has done a tremendous amount of work in the field of autism around theory of mind, thinking about others. So Cindy and I reviewed this and decided that we would go forward with this project to do an assessment of all the children in our program, and then implement this curriculum. And so the concepts that are part of this curriculum are such concepts as helping children understanding the thinking and feeling of themselves and others, how to make a group plan, how to be part of a group, how to think with their eyes, how to keep their body in the group, and whole body listening, which what we know about 4- and 5-year-olds, they're very capable of doing this. So again, what we would be doing, and as you can see up there, there are very clear steps to what we would be doing. We've already conducted our assessment, and Cindy and I are reviewing that, and then we'll be implementing the next steps. And additionally, the curriculum comes with books that we will be using in the classroom, et cetera. But I think one of the most exciting things about this, this goal, when we brought this to Tom, he recommended that instead of looking at this as a one-year goal, that we take and implement this program, and then next fall, look at the data collected by the kindergarten team using possibly the kindergarten readiness survey or something that would look at social skills, and then possibly adapt what we had done and implement it again next year as well. So I really appreciate Tom's thought around our goal and continuing this work if we feel that it is a valuable curriculum to our program. So,
Good job.
questions or anything? Oh,
Okay.
all right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I mean, I think that's great, especially that last part. I mean, I was actually going to hit on some of those questions, but I'll do it after on some of the school-wide data. But I mean, I just think that's always a question in my mind. You guys you see the kids and you see what's needed, but then we're going to implement something, but then how do we know it worked? I mean, that's really just the basic question, right? And so that's being clear about that at the beginning. Well, this is how we think we're going to know that it worked. What are we trying to have happen? It makes us think about, well, what does that mean? We see that the kids aren't ready for kindergarten or don't have great social skills, whatever it is, but then you have to somehow quantify that, or somehow we have to know what it means, because then that's what we want to look at next year, or that's what we want to look at the year after, and then keep going from there, because I think that's how we get to continuous improvement. And so with anything that we're doing, I mean, that's great to see, right? So I really like it.
Hi, I'm Marcy Morgan, first grade teacher.
And I'm Kaylee Bufano, and I'm a kindergarten teacher.
And can we
So
have
welcome,
the-
everyone.
the
Thank you for
other
coming to
first
Hiawatha.
K
Oh,
teachers
sure.
also stand up and share who you guys are.
I'm Karen Stevens. I'm going down here in New Jersey, and Colleen Stevens had a doctor's appointment today, so she couldn't make it. Justin Babbitt, I'm the other first grade teacher. Kim McVeigh, I was a first grade teacher too.
Thanks for coming.
So our goal is really based around a trend that we have noticed over the past several years, where many kindergarten students at the end of kindergarten have passed the text level benchmark. And then over the summer, they come back, they're fragile readers to begin with. So when they come back into first grade, we were finding a large number of kids that had passed in May, but were not passing in September. And so our goal is really trying to figure out what's going on, how can we support them, and how can we try to make sure that, when they start first grade, they're ready to go and right where they need to be. So one of the first steps that we did, Karen Seaman and I, while our student teachers had their solo weeks, we had a little extra time, so we were able to take those kids who had passed in May but didn't pass in September and reassess them and see if in November if they were close to that benchmark and where they were at, and sort of go from there.
Yeah, so that was kind of the first step, was to figure out, are these students coming in and they've regressed and they're not making up for it, or are some of them making up for it? And we found a little of both. There were students that had made up the regression, and there were students that had not. So from there, we kind of decided, well, this would be a great goal for us to work on with kindergarten and first grade. And we actually started the conversation last year. So it's kind of formed over, I don't know, I feel like we've been talking about it for a while, but we decided that this could be a joint goal that was multi-year, because basically we've already passed on our kindergartners from last year to this year, so it didn't make sense to think about what we could do to help them. They're in first grade, so now it's kind of the steps, what's first grade going to do to support those kids? But for the purposes of our goal, we decided, let's take next year's kindergarten students. So next year's kindergarten students will be our cohort that we use. And this year, really, we're going to use as a research year. So researching, how can we help these students with regression? What sorts of things can we do or plan for them to do throughout the summer to help decrease some of that regression? And what sorts of things can we do at the start, or can the first grade teachers really do at the start of next year, as far as intervention, starting off earlier in the year? We spend a lot of time those first few weeks really just building the community and rules and procedures, but we also know that we could figure out ways to better support those students earlier in the school year. So this year we're just kind of researching, figuring out, talking with other colleagues, and deciding what we're going to do for next year. And then we're really going to follow that group of students. So our kindergartners next year, we're going to follow through. And the more we talked about it, the more we realized this is really a school thing. Students just don't regress just from kindergarten to first grade. We know that regression happens at all grade levels. So we're really hoping that through our goal, we'll be able to provide other grade levels with strategies to help students keeping their skills up throughout the summer and starting intervention earlier in the school year. But we will follow this group of kids all the way through third grade. So we're pretty excited. It's going to be a long goal, but hopefully the students and the staff at the school will benefit.
also our school librarian and media center coordinator is also going to be working with the team, as well as Ann Ventura, our special educator who this year works with kindergarten and first grade.
Any questions?
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
And I think Mary Beth and Karen, why don't you guys join Chrissy, okay?
How are you? I'm Chrissy Frankenhoff. I'm the second grade rep today.
I'm Karen Harvey,
And I,
joining her
I've
today.
actually asked for some moral support. It's the camera.
Oh, thanks. I was good till you mentioned that.
So we've chosen a very similar goal to what we had last year, where we took students identified in first grade who are not meeting benchmark standards for math, primarily in primary numbers and operations. So we used the first grade PNOA assessment to come up with some starting numbers, and we identified a group of about 14 children. And in spite of them scoring remarkably well on the CBM, we felt like that wasn't really a great measure to not provide some intervention with them. So we have taken this group of 14 kiddos, and we are giving them a little bit of extra help and support within the classroom on a daily basis. We're differentiating between those kids so that, although we each have approximately a group of 5 students, we're breaking it down even further. So, one day we might work with kids on sequencing, another day we might not meet with those same children. So it's really broken down so that all kids' needs are being met. And our goal is to close that gap with those students to really help them increase their math scores on the PNOA. Do you want to add to that?
No, I think that was great.
I'm moral support.
Do you have any questions? Thank you.
And again, just to share, Liz Wolf is our special educator who works in grades 2 and 3, and Liz has been really instrumental in working with Karen and Chrissy and Mary Beth in terms of formulating and crafting that goal statement, and certainly doing a lot of the assessment work using the PNOA, the primary numbers observation assessment. And we try so hard here at Hiawatha to keep everything connected and relevant. I just sent a note to Chrissy Frankenhoff and Liz Wolf today. I've asked them to also work with one of our paraprofessionals who works actually mostly in quite a bit in Chrissy's room, and asking them to make a connection that would support the paraprofessional goal around improving student performance. So it's not just a licensed faculty piece. We try really hard to include our paraprofessional staff in this work as well.
Hi.
Guess we're all sitting.
My name is Liz Wolf. I'm one of the learning specialists working with 2nd and 3rd grade, Hiawatha.
And I'm Rachel O'Donnell. I'm a 3rd grade teacher.
And I'm Shauna Martell, and I'm also a 3rd grade teacher.
And Julie Furness, and I'm also a 3rd grade teacher.
So our goal is also around math and using the PNOA, which Chrissy spoke about, and the CBM, which Tom has also shared about, and observations and comments from last year's teachers. We developed a list of 21 students who have gaps in their 2nd grade math skills as measured by the PNOA. So after we developed that target list, all of those students were administered the full PNOA by Liz. And we got together and kind of unpacked the Common Core standards, the 3rd grade Common Core standards, and did some curriculum mapping where we really pulled apart each standard. And
I'm going to switch sides.
so this is an example. For each of the standards, we have done this.
And in the first column, it's the Common Core standard, and then the second column shows the content of the lessons that, that we'll teach to get to those standards. And then the third column is resources that we have that we'll be using in our lessons. And then the intervention column is the fourth column. And all of those skills that you see are things that were on the, or are on the PNOA assessment. So gaps that those 21 kids had, all of those kind of appear in that, that intervention and prerequisite skill, and we'll be teaching those in pull-out groups, some in-class support, and then the final column is the extensions for kids who have kind of mastered pieces of, or the whole standard.
In our data, with the PNOA, you can get very specific as to what students are missing. So there you might see it says, counting by fives, but we have data not just a student can't count by fives, but what range they can count within and what's tricky for them. So when you're working with a specific child, you can really target their need rather than, oh, we're going to pull a group to count by fives. It's like, well, here are different groups we can pull based on the ranges or the areas that they're struggling. And then we are using Google Docs, like everyone does really, but to communicate as a team to keep that data and specific notes about specific children. So we're hoping to be very efficient with the way we address and close gaps.
I'm Karen Reed, music teacher here. And I'm Kim Desjardins, the art teacher. My goal is not about reading and math scores necessarily. My goal is to focus on fully engaged students. And I chose a third grade classroom. And as you can imagine, I see all the kids at the same time for a certain amount of time. We both do. And when we do whole group activities, it can be a challenge for every child to be fully engaged. You want them all doing the same thing, but are they fully engaged in it? So under, I'm using Charlotte Danielson's framework for teaching, and under planning and preparation is what I'm focusing on. And I plan to be intentional in preparing the lessons so that all the learners can be challenged and successful. Those with needing special education services, those that are like in the normal range, and those that are above the normal, needing like enrichment and extension. So an important piece of this focus is going to be learning more about this approach, universal design for learning. That's this essential idea of universal design for learning is about removing barriers, whatever barriers they might be, so that learning is accessible for all. And so to that end, I have signed up to take 4 workshops throughout the school year, specifically for universal design for learning. And just this last week on Friday, I had the first of those 4 workshops, and it was amazing. It was a lot of information, but it was about universal design in the brain. It was really interesting and just opened up a new way of thinking. So I'm excited about learning how to really kind of open up, I don't know what I'm opening up, but opening up experiences for the kids to just kind of understand things better and explore things more and create things more. So that's my goal. Music classes are just such a wonderful opportunity for collaboration, cooperation, exploration, creativity amid the joy and beauty of music. I just encourage you as a aside, if you want to just come to the Hiawatha Music website, which is on the my blog. It's on the school website. Then you see lots of pictures and information about what goes on in music classes. So.
Okay. And for art, my first year here was last year, and my kind of overarching goal is 100% student performance proficiency in art from last year's kindergarten as they leave third grade. And one of the main points I'm focusing on is scope and sequence of my curriculum, and also the clarity of the curriculum. So recently, at one of the workshop days over, like right before our break, we had a chance to meet kindergarten through 12th grade fine arts, and this was Essex Town and our district. And so we're really working on aligning our curriculum K through 12 and that vertical team. I'm working on a curriculum map, and really as in the second year, I'm trying to build upon prior knowledge from last year. So also as an art team, we are, it's probable that we'll soon switch to a new standard for art called the National Core Art Standards, which is pretty exciting. It's kind of, I think it's the first national standard for art, so it's great. I also do a lot of integration. It's part of the work here, and I love combining art with other subjects. So my goal is to continue that, and I brought a couple of examples that I'll put up on the stage, but recently with the first grade and Kathy Lawrence, the librarian, we did a rewrite. They did an author study and studied Lois Ehlert, and then rewrote the books with collages that they made in art that had to do with, reflecting Lois Ehlert's art. So I just wanted to share those. Went really well. And lastly, I believe in art as really important to be a part of to promote a really positive community in the school. And recently, I asked the question to a third grade class, why is art important to us? And a lot of the answers were really aligned with Elliot Eisner, an art education writer, theorist. This is kind of funny, they really hit the nail on the head. Anyone can be an artist. It doesn't have to be perfect. There's no right or wrong way, and it's a good way to get the negativity out and express your feelings. And then a really poignant response was a third grade boy who said, art puts 99% of the beauty in life. So I love that. Questions?
I have a question, and it might be something the superintendent has to answer, but Karen, you're only here at Hiawatha, right, as a music, and are you only here, Cam?
No, I work outside the district also. It's my position is 0.45 FTE.
Okay. 'Cause I'm curious, do you give an opportunity for the art and music teachers to get together as K through 12 throughout the year?
Yeah, that's the in-service that she was just talking about.
That was the in-service.
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't a special.
Yep, it
And
was.
maybe you can talk a little bit about the brainstorming that occurred at that.
Yeah, and that's also really part of promoting community too. We are, an idea's in the works for a teaching artist to come. She does performance art and lantern making, and we're working out the details, but basically she works in schools and helps people make, the students and community make these amazing lanterns using willow, and they're really architectural and structural, and there's a lot of different ways to make them for different ages, but and then it culminates with a big parade, and Waterbury had just had their 5th year of their parade called River of Light. So it's really community building and celebration of art, and a lot of the technology and science and engineering too.
So they did it as last Saturday in Waterbury?
Yes.
The River Lights Parade. And we were talking about what could an Essex community stream lights look like.
Maybe
So
it's a
it would be-
train.
It was really exciting. Green Mountain Coffee Roasters donated coffee filters, which are used as the foundation for these lanterns. And we're looking at how to move that project forward in a K-12, including Essex Town, to possibly culminate next December in our own community river lights or stream of lights. So stay tuned.
You can check out Gowrie Savor. She's the artist. Her website. It's on WordPress, or there's a Stuck in Vermont webisode about the River of Light too. Thank you.
And is it March?
Yeah, the K through 12 Arts Night is March 14th? 12th, 14th, it's one of those two.
Yeah, Celebration of Creative Minds, and
Yeah.
that's K-12, including Essex, and it starts at 5 o'clock.
It's every year, right?
It's every year.
Same one every year.
It's becoming in, yeah, 5:30ish, and go early, because parking is problematic at
Yes.
the high school, if you can imagine.
Yeah.
Quite an event.
So that brings to an end our team presentations. I would like, however, to recognize the rest of our faculty, because as I indicated earlier, we do have a number of folks who do more of a self-directed approach in terms of their goal setting. And so maybe we can just kind of start over here. Raina, you want to get up and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Raina Marr. I'm the school nurse here at Hiawatha.
Scott Evans, school counselor.
I'm Christine Elias. I'm a speech and language pathologist. Gail Johnson, English language teacher.
I think we got everyone. So,
Great.
just a couple of closing comments and remarks. Just want to thank all of you for helping out with the presentation this afternoon. We actually have a number, or a few faculty members who had a previous commitment and weren't able to be here. And one of those individuals is also a person who's working with a paraprofessional around a common, almost colleague consultation kind of goal format. So I thought that was noteworthy, because again, it's not just what we're doing as licensed faculty, but it's also with our paraprofessional colleagues. I think one of the takeaways I would like our Prudential committee to have as we finish this afternoon is this notion of teaming. And this is something that we've really been challenging ourselves to do here at Hiawatha for a number of years. I actually was at a team meeting 3 weeks ago, and I joked with the team members who were there. The easiest thing for me to do would be to say, do your own thing. And don't worry about teaming, and don't worry about coming to some sort of common approach. But I think we all understand that given the complexity of our work nowadays, that just would not be a good thing to do. And I really have challenged my teacher colleagues and paraprofessional colleagues to team in a collaborative and meaningful way. I don't want people just to kind of get together and spin their wheels and not feel very productive. I need to say that given all the things that I am directing and requiring and expecting from my faculty and staff, I continually struggle with the amount of time that's required to do that. And I'm not sure what the answer is. And we've had a lot of conversations about our schedule, our master schedule, over the last 3 years. I would say maybe even 3 or 4 years. And I'm not sure where the solution lies. So it is a challenge. I appreciate the amazing effort that everyone brings to the table. And I've actually said this past year, it's like in search of the Holy Grail. It's like that schedule that allows us to be here for the kids and our families, but also provides adequate meeting time. And I still, I'm just not sure where that solution lies, as I indicated. So we're actively thinking about it, pursuing it, and we've had some good conversations at the table in terms of the budget process, and hopefully we'll be able to resource that need in a way that is certainly absolutely good for kids and creates time for our staffs to truly collaborate and cooperate with each other in a way that's not overwhelming and one more thing to do. So
just a couple. I had a comment just kind of on all the presentations, and it's probably more for you. And I'll get to that in a second. But just on that one, just make sure to let us know whether it's through the budget process or whatever. Scheduling. I think that's hard for us to work on. But if it's money for subs, if you give us 3 options, right? Something. Come with something. If you can come with something that says, okay, you want more time for teaming. Okay, here's some options. And okay, then we can figure out how to, do you need money from the board to implement that? Do we need more money for subs for targeted days? I don't know how it's done even, right? But that's where we can help, right? And so what if we need it, then let's figure out how to fit it in or how to get it done, I think. And so, yeah, maybe that happens during budget season this time for next year, or if it's not something that fits into we don't know a year ahead of time yet what we want to do. Okay, well then we have to do it during the year and figure out how to do it. I don't know. If you need us, or if it can be handled inside, great. You guys are taking care of it inside the existing budget, right? So just on all the presentations, I mean, I thought those were great, and the multi-year is so clear that we need that kind of thing. And just thinking about the board, we know we'll change probably 2 board members in the course of just practical matters, right? We'll probably change 2 board members in the course of a lot of these multi-year plans. So what would be great, I think, for the board, I mean, people can just whatever agree or totally disagree, and maybe Tom, if you can kind of come up with, it's like the summary, the tracking file that's going to be kind of the summary, not all the details. That's great to have as reference because a new board member comes on, they can hit those things that we just saw as what is this about? But then maybe you can make that part of the principal's reports. It's updates on long-term, action plans. And there wouldn't be an update every month, for sure, probably, right? But that way, something to keep it so that way, this is going to go on for 3 or 4 years. Well, that way, new board members, they come on. That's always a problem for us with turnover and getting up to speed and, what is happening? That way, there's something they can refer to. Okay, I got the context for this. This is where it fits in. And then there's, sort of an update, whether it's a yearly update or, probably a little more than a year, but something that where then, okay, then that's that they can refer to because this is, kind of going to go through, all the years and keep going. But that could be helpful. Right.
Understood.
Some way to, I mean, you probably have a way to kind of keep track of it, but some way to kind of net it down, and then we're just getting small updates along the way for, it's going to last 3 or 4 years. I mean, not all of them, but that would be great.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
It's almost like the personalized learning plans, that whole process. And as one board member, I know the yearly calendar has to change. And I know when the superintendents talked about the 2.0 calendar, there was quite an uproar, but from going to the Vermont School Board Association's meetings and all the meetings I go to, it's getting critical that the school year is going to have to change, I think it's going to have to develop from the bottom up, because when the superintendents tried it, it was I think people feeling it was forced upon them. So with teachers and principals telling you, you don't have enough time to do this to get students where you want them to be, that's where we need, from the bottom coming up, forcing change. So, just a suggestion.
So, thank you. And again, on behalf of our children and our families and our faculty and staff, I just want to say thank you so much for all that you do. I know you guys are really sometimes put between a rock and a hard spot, and I admire your work, and I really admire your willingness to connect with our respective schools in a very real way. And I think that was, again, a big part of creating that engagement this afternoon. So thank you all for all of your hard work.
I think all of us, many years ago, I had a student in this school district, but I think we love our schools so much. And I value the teachers. I know the other board members do. And maybe we value the principals a little bit.
Thank you, Marla.
Got to pick on you, Tom.
It's okay. No worries. All right, thanks.
Thanks to all you guys for staying late and coming. That's great. So,
Yes, thank you all.
Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Would you like me at the table anymore?
We're one topic
or
behind.
You guys are good, or?
I gotta look at it.
You got to leave at 6?
Yeah.
He's got to leave at 6.
All right. It's on you, Tim.
It's on you to
It's
stop
on me to-
talking.
oh, yes.
Jeez. It's on you and me to shut
Okay.
up.
Okay. Oh man, I got lots to say about this next one though.
Well, we're actually not
okay.
done yet. Because
Now
I'll give
the
a couple
pressure
moments.
is on
Highlights.
Jennifer
Yes.
to do the rest of the principal reports in 5 minutes.
Especially with them in the
Come closer.
do you want to sit a little closer, Dan, or do you like us to
Come closer. You are welcome to sit close to
way over there?
even up at the table.
Well, there's room. Come on up, all of you. Come, there's room at the table.
If you want.
Amy,
As you like.
come up.
They're fine. Let's go.
All right, so just to finish up the principal reports, Jen will brief out some highlights from the other 3 schools.
I'm going to start with ADL. As you guys know, Amanda Eldridge was UVM's 2014 Outstanding Educator of the Year. She was honored in October and has since been nominated as the VFW Teacher of the Year. The 7th graders had yet another fantastic Empty Bowls evening where they raised and donated over $1,000 to the Heavenly Pantry here in Essex. And their Scholastic Book Fair also accomplished their goal of making $2,500. Team Discovery 7th and 8th grade students hosted a night at the Egyptian Museum, and using a flashlight tour, visitors get to view and learn about artifacts from ancient Egypt. Families finally get to access their Power School portal for the first time, and the feedback was really positive on that during their student-led conferences. The science teachers have studied the NACAP results, and they're identifying trends with that. They are working on, they're going to spiral content throughout the year, and they're writing a common inquiry task that will benchmark the students and gauge their next steps on this. Essex Middle School and ADL Math and Science teachers also met to discuss writing a common performance task and rubric that's based on the next gen science standards, and the Westford teachers were also invited. Some public events over the next month. ADL's holiday concert is December 18th at 7. American Red Cross Blood Drive is January 8th from 2 to 6, and this fills up quickly, so sign up early. Parents as Partners meeting is January 8th at 6:30, and ADL is going to host the District Music Festival on January 30th. Moving on to Thomas Fleming School. The Fleming educators are working with literacy coach and consultant Beth Moore to really engage the students in these opportunities to learn more in these areas since they'll be tested with the SBACs for the first time on this. They are looking forward to providing critical feedback to the district math resource team to decide which core math resources for grades K through 8 to use, as they have been piloting several different ones throughout the year. Their SBAC implementation team has begun using released practice tests with the students. Their testing window will run from March 17th until June 4th. Melissa Coviello has continued to lead and review the analysis of their Science NACAP test results, and the math and science teachers are meeting to delve into this deeper as well. They had a very successful and memorable Veterans Day observance there, and there was a huge turnout of veterans and community members. They also just had a gratitude assembly right before heading out for the Thanksgiving break. The student council got to present an artistic presentation. The students also constructed a gratitude chain that stretched from one end of the school to the other, and each link of this chain had a statement of gratitude written by the students. So that was great. Finally, they do have their school musical again in February and have chosen Susan Palmer as the director. They've also been given a $2,500 grant from the Vermont Arts Council to support this. And Summit Street, they've had a few things in October. They had their school-wide celebration for being safe, kind, and responsible. They were able to have a crazy hair day during the fun run where the students were really, they had a great time having their parents there, checking off the laps and playing music and cheering as well. They also had their annual spaghetti dinner, which was a great opportunity for the families to sit down and have a great meal together. They've been working a lot with their professional development. They had an opportunity for Kim Assam from New England Family Institute to present the staff on trauma-informed learning environments and to better support these students. They also got to meet with Hiawatha teachers on the primary numbers operations assessment, and they continue their work with writing consultant Beth Moore and math consultant Sandy Stanhope. Next Thursday, December 11th, is their December holiday dinner, which will be served from 11 to 12:30. All the schools will have this, but check the times because they will vary. And those are the principal reports.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Since the principals are here, is there anything you wanted to add to those particular report outs?
I have a footnote that, once again, we've had 2 students selected through their writing performance to have their writing pieces presented as part of the Flint Theater's Winter Tales.
Okay.
They select 10 students, I believe, statewide. In the past 3 years, we've been very well represented at that Flint Theater presentation.
That's a pretty cool thing.
So we have 2 student writers whose works will be presented by professional actors at Winter Tales.
Great.
When is that? Do you know?
It's next week.
Next week sometime?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you select a play yet?
Yes, I just left the committee that was working on it. It's going to be
Is it a secret?
no, it's going to be a circus theme
Oh.
play.
Okay. Thank you. Next, we're going to go into a discussion of the science kneecap results.
So at the November board meeting, October board meeting, we had just received the recently released science kneecap results, and we asked the board for some time to analyze the results and that we would be prepared to speak to them at the December meeting. So the principals are here for questions. You did see within their reports, each of their reports included action steps that they're intentionally and deliberately moving forward with. Amy Cole, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessments here as well, to really talk about the area we see throughout the system, inquiry being the area of concern, that we seem to have the background and content knowledge in physical and earth and life sciences, but it's that area of inquiry that we struggle with. And your principals are here to answer any questions that you may have or any statements that anyone would like to make on their principal's report.
I think I pointed out in the, I sent you the graph that when my teachers looked at the data that in addition to inquiry, we also found that the earth science was relatively lower than the other areas that should be with us. That was the other area, and I think it's not a mystery that happened, that the earth science is generally a lot of, I think the material that happens is more the elementary grades. They get a lot of it in 4, 5, and some in 6, and by the time they get into 7 and 8, you're seeing life science and you're seeing physical science and earth science. It's been a while since I've seen that, which is why the ABL teachers have realized that they really need to go to more of a spiraling kind of curriculum throughout the time that students are at ABL, so that it'll go deeper, more analysis, more critical reasoning in each of those areas as it cycles up through the 3 grade levels. But at least it won't be students in the 8th grade in May of 8th grade trying to pull back information that they had for earth science that they haven't seen since 4th or 5th grade. So I think that should help a lot with the the earth science piece of that information, and then you can see in the notes, things that are being done in terms of trying to improve the inquiry task piece of that. And that's been a struggle, I think, all along, and it's across the state of Vermont. Inquiry, if you look at that, is always the lowest scoring part of the recap science assessment. And I think all the things that people are doing within our buildings leading up to the time students will get to SAD will continue to strengthen that. So we really anticipate those increased scores rising.
So just on the charts, a quick question, right? So is it not added up? Because the total proficiency is like 25%, but then all the 4 buckets are 50 and above. So are there other buckets that are much lower? Because it seems that, like, just take 2014, like, it doesn't seem to add to the total, or even average. If I average the 4 buckets, I don't get the total. Or is that just because they were not proficient in multiple buckets, and so the total is...
There were multiple buckets, they were not.
Okay, so it's not, you can't average those ones and come up with the other one. It's really, if you're not proficient in any of those, then you get it into the total.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Just to make sense of the breakout.
Yeah. It was really, they were just really trying to drill down into, so here really is the issue with what is the need what we're doing.
There's a difference too in terms of scores and scaled scores. You can see it a little bit on the measured progress report. If you look at either 4th or 8th grade, this graphic at the bottom shows total number of points, and then what you'll see if you see a percentage of points, and you can see a little bit of what Lori's talking about in terms of breakdown for life science, physical science, and where inquiry lags behind. It should be, it's just page 3 of 4 for both grade 8 and grade 4. And that's that area that we were pointing to, that we're looking at inquiry. What this doesn't tell you is some of the work that, and I think you saw it on Tom's graph, how close kids are to some of those proficiency bands. Large number of our kiddos are 1 or 2 points away.
So can you put it in English for me? So his number 440, scaled score or something. I don't know. I mean, so it was 438. So what does that mean? One question?
Exactly.
I don't know what that means.
It was one or even one part of the question sometimes that students did not answer correctly, especially if it was in the inquiry section, which is a very long answer because it's made up of multiple responses from the student. So they might miss a section that they didn't pay enough detail to answer, but the rest of the questions they filled in just fine, and so they missed it by 1 or 2 points. We had I think 18 students that missed the proficiency bar by 1 or 2 points.
And so is that like the big drop? I mean, what seems dramatic is the big drop, like year over year.
Last year, I think I had told you guys, is that instead of a hands-on task, which traditionally all of Vermont 8th graders do much better in, it was a complete literacy task. It was a big piece of text that they had to work through, and the inquiry was about taking that apart as opposed to a hands-on inquiry task, which is much more like what we do in a regular classroom. It's not very often in a science classroom when you talk about a lab or an inquiry task, it's usually that hands-on thing. So it's had us go back in and think about an inquiry task in a different way. And I think even looking at that alone and trying to practice some of that kind of inquiry will help scores all the way across the way. We're also looking at it just in terms of literacy across all content areas, is how do we tackle the topic of inquiry, because it's not just a science thing. Inquiry is across the board. So we're really looking at it in a different way as well across the school, not just as a science thing. But yeah, the big drop was because it was a written task this year. It was not a hands-on task.
Yeah, if you look at the chart, we're looking at the chart for 4th grade science results. The percentage of possible points that were gained on this assessment were between 60 and 70% of the points across those 3 strands of physical science, earth science, and life science. Yet, less than half of that, 30% of the points, were gained on inquiry. And I would share, not to be defensive, but I don't really think it is reflective of our students' inquiry skills. I think it's more reflective of the gotcha nature of the inquiry tasks that we're given. A couple years ago, we were given a task that our superintendent observed walking through the classroom where students had straws. They were supposed to be demonstrating erosion. They used straws to blow sand around a table, and the sand was everywhere. And it was just poorly designed lab. This year, not as an excuse, but it took the inquiry setup, took the teacher and 2 other adults an hour to set up, and when it was set up, it wasn't set up, it wasn't designed for a classroom setting, it was more designed for a science lab situation. The students work in groups on the lab nature, but they were working with skateboard ramps, mini skateboard ramps, on their desktops. And the desktops weren't long enough for the ramp to get the results. Plus the desktops were not balanced. They were not level. The teacher didn't go through the classroom and level. So the results from the lab were impacted by the fact that the setup for the lab, we didn't have any warning. We get the equipment right before the test comes, and everything is tight security, so they don't let us know what the nature of the lab is going to be in advance. They try to change it up to make it different fields of science. This one happened to be physical science. But as I shared with you also, it's very important that our math curriculum aligns with our science curriculum. On this particular assessment for 4th graders, they were asked questions that they had to answer with measurements of centimeters. They hadn't had a great amount of experience working with centimeters, and they had to find the median and mode of their answers. And they had no experience with that. So if we wonder why the inquiry task scored so low, and was
But if it was tested, it's in the standards, right? So they should have had experience.
It would have been in the math standards. We're shifting to new math standards. So everything's in a little bit of a flux right now around literacy, math, and science. The next-gen science standards do connect. They've done a nice job of showing how they're connecting to each of the math and literacy standards, but I think you're talking about a piece of background knowledge that wasn't explicitly in the science standards, but was related to math that they needed to use.
So, some pluses have come out of this. Certainly, we're recognizing that we need some more science professional development. So Amy's arranged for us to work with Liz Mira, a science curriculum specialist. So she's going to come in and work with our math and science teachers next month in January. We've set that up. 4th and 5th grade teachers are working hard to show students how math and science go hand in hand. It was very clear on this assessment when we analyzed it, what I just shared with you, how the math was aligning with the science they were asked to demonstrate. We continue to work on writing, certainly, and we spent several years focused on constructive response writing so that students' performance on open-ended questions on these assessments, they would be able to answer fully and with quality work. And we did see the results of that a couple years back, and our scores were like 62% proficient. We don't take solace in the fact that we're above the state average and have been each year that we've taken this assessment, and our scores are the highest in the district compared to our students across the district and Westford. But 50% isn't good enough, isn't cutting it. There's a large group of students, as already been mentioned, that missed the 440 band by a point. And that's been the case the past 2 years, particularly, we've noticed that. Which also, another area that doesn't add up for us is that every year for the past 3 years, we across the schools, I think particularly ADL and Fleming, we've had a higher percentage of students who are scoring at the distinguished level in math. That number continues to rise. Yet for the past 2 years on this science assessment, we've not had one student who scored a 4. That doesn't make sense to us. We don't understand that at all. We would expect to have, many of our students score 4s on this science assessment, so that doesn't add up.
Yeah, so I think the challenge for us is what's the number? So we know this is just one test, and there's definitely issues with it, it sounds like. So based on all the other experiences, how can we, but this gets made public, right? So how can you help us communicate more completely how we're doing in science? So, I think that's the continuation from this is yeah, if there's issues, then let's ignore it. Who cares? Let's be done with it. Let's not use it if there's an issue, for that part of it. What's the data that tells us how they're doing on that part? I don't want data from a crappy experiment. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So put it to the side, but what on a good constructed experiment?
Yeah.
How are we at 80%? How do we know where we are?
Well, I understand that's a conversation that the district science curriculum committee is already starting to have, which is how can we build local assessments in science to see how our students are progressing and not just leave it up to kneecap science to demonstrate that. So,
But my memory probably is terrible, but the kneecap science assessment, when I read the state literature you put in our org notes, it says it's the assessment consortium of Vermont, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire. So it's not even a nationwide testing. And when we go to Common Core standards and your SBAC test, are we going to eliminate having to take the kneecap science assessment?
We've adopted the Math and Literacy Common Core, and SBAC will measure that. We've adopted Vermont has adopted the Next Generation Science Standards. There are, I think, 23 states. I have to look up that number that are part of Next Gen Science. Far fewer than have adopted Common Core. So the participating states for Next Gen Science Standards are meeting to try to figure out what assessment would be appropriate in 2017. Spring 2016 will be our last kneecap assessment.
2 more years.
So we'll be transitioning to Next Gen, and we already are in that process. We're in the process of transitioning to Next Gen so that we'll be in full implementation 2015-16. Spring 2016 will be our last kneecap year. We're going to be moving to another test that we don't know what it is just yet. There's a group of states that are getting together to try to figure out what it is. We know that inquiry standards will look like engineering standards, and that they'll be assessed in a similar way, and that it'll be something hands-on in some way. And we know that there's some content that fall under those 3 same content areas. But we don't know what it looks like. We don't know if they're going to be shooting for computer adaptive pieces. A lot of this is still sort of in negotiations. If we think about just Essex Junction, half of the teachers right now or half of the grade levels have students in it that will never see science kneecap. So a number of our teachers have started to challenge themselves to shift over to Next Gen Science Standards. The other half of our grades still have students that are going to be assessed in science kneecap. So we're in that funny place right now where we're sort of looking forward and looking back at the same time. But inquiry and engineering is something that we've committed to. Liz Muir is coming out and working with a number of the schools to talk about what those practices look like in the classroom and those dispositions. And we're looking at, we're negotiating with her to be able to run a course this summer around those kinds of practices for kids. So we're confident that if we could sort of spend our energy on inquiry and engineering standards, that it would support both performance on kneecap and Next Gen. But I think Dan and Laurie spoken about, there's a bit of unpredictability about when the assessment comes in terms of exactly what those tasks look like.
If we know we're moving, I mean, I support just forgetting about the kneecap, right? We know we're moving over. Why should we keep trying to teach to it, right? We don't even like half of the test on it. We don't like the results we're getting. No, let's move over. I mean, we have what can happen? We're already a failing school, right? I mean, we got labeled. All the schools in the state got labeled that. What's the penalty? Seriously, what's the penalty if it gets worse on the kneecap because we don't test to it exactly? If there's no penalty, then we know we're going to next generation. Let's move over to those standards, build our assessments for them, and focus on those. And we put that out, and we say, that here's our results on our assessments of the next generation, because that's what we teach to.
So we have a few shifts going on. All of ELA and math has also shifted at the same time. So as our teachers are taking on these major curriculum shifts,
Right.
I think ELA and math have been out of the gate for like 3 years now. Second year. So it's, you know, trying to make it, as Tom was talking about earlier, doable. You know, when they are especially K-5 teachers who teach all of these standards.
Right.
So because they have to teach all of them, we're shifting through it at a rate that you know, we can manage. And Next Gen was just released last year, so our teachers are, you know, in process.
Right, yeah. I only meant it to make it easier. You know, let's make it easier. Let's not try to do both, if that makes sense. You know, but of course, map it in where it makes sense to like move over. But you know.
Well, we're poised to take this on because we departmentalized at Fleming. So those who teach math also teach science.
Right.
And they're not teaching reading or literacy. So.
And at ADL, the new standards that are on the report card that we're using this year are next gen standards. We already made that. We made that commitment, so did Westford. So we're both reporting on those standards, and so has EMS. So when the teachers met a month ago, they started creating a performance task that all three middle schools will finish writing. They'll write rubrics and benchmarks, and then they're going to bring student work and get together and do some data digging in terms of that, but we'll at least have those that first performance task will have some information from that in terms of how are our kids performing using next gen standards in the classroom, but it's also going to be a performance inquiry task. So we'll have that kind of information to be able to start giving back to you and to the community at large and the families as far as this is what we're seeing.
Right. And can we put out with those report cards, right? That's all the standards, and we're using those standards. So can we put that out at the end of the year to be similar to? Okay, we've totaled that up. This percent is proficient. You know, meeting. You know, all of those are meeting everything by the end of the year or whatever. We could do that 6th, 7th, and 8th and be even better than the NECAP at the 8th.
So that'll be our first stab at it and using next gen standards.
Great.
Really good. So we sort of jumped off the cliff at the middle level in all three middle
Yeah,
schools.
that's what we should do. Yeah, that's where we're going.
So this is their first year of the standards-based
No,
reporting.
sure, yeah.
So the families are now learning what those standards are too. So it's a big transition.
Right.
And you know, we're still looking at systems that can help inform as well. So we're moving at a pace that doesn't always feel doable or healthy, but I think that we've made great strides under the leadership of our principals and our curriculum director in keeping the standards and that movement front and center. It's been the work of the schools, all PD, for the last 3 years.
The curriculum leaders that first came into the budget last year, these are stipend positions. We have 4 curriculum leaders at each of our schools, have made a huge difference. And it can still be a little choppy, just because of the bulk of the work. But having a defined, purposeful pipeline in place, if you will, that really brings us right to Amy's office through these content area teams, right to the school, right to the grade level. It's really made a remarkable difference.
And thanks for bringing that up, Tom, because that's a direct correlation between how a board resources. Now, this was done through title funds this year. We're looking at seeing if that strategy, CFG funds, I should say, will be accepted again. But, you know, here's a heads up, not this coming budget season, but maybe the next, we may be turning locally for those kinds of supports. Because that teacher leadership at a K-12 district level is really important. to sustain. So right now, we're grant funding that, and looking forward to another year of being able to do that. But this is sort of early heads up, maybe you're out after that.
And I don't know if Tom mentioned when you put up your science results, but, you know, one of the things that we're up against also in terms of time is, you know, curriculum-wise, English language arts and math are gobbling up giant blocks of time, more so every year, especially since we've been focusing on the Common Core and that shift. And so then the time that's available for science and social studies, it's less in terms of the week. And science has to vie with social studies in our schools for that amount of time. So, you know, opportunity to learn and time to learn also impacts what our students' results look like in those areas of science and social studies. And we know social studies isn't being assessed, so that can also take a back seat to science. But social studies is important. Students learning about civics is important. But we're under greater and greater pressures to make time certainly for literacy and make time for math. And that pressure causes us to, you know, short shrift some, admittedly, what time we have available and we're dedicating to science and social studies. So, you know, we're taking a look at our schedules all the time, as Tom mentioned earlier. And we're cognizant of that fact and trying to be protective of that time. But it's tough. It's tough to do.
So I guess, piggybacking on what Tim said, do we have to legally even give the kneecap tests the next 2 years because we're switching over?
I don't know that you asked that.
So, I mean, that's how much money do we spend on doing something that's gonna be not even
We're
relevant?
legally required to give the state assessments that
Yes.
are mandated to us, so as long, until Vermont leaves that.
Just have to give it.
Part of
Don't
our
have to do it.
requirement.
Don't have to teach to it.
I know. It's very daunting.
You're the leader.
Come on, let's take the lead. Okay.
Well, thank you guys for giving us a lot more information and for coming tonight. Appreciate your time. It's a cold evening out there, so.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank them
Good
for
night.
giving us more discouragement, right?
Yes.
We start talking about funding mechanisms and.
Well, come on, Tim just gave them a way out, so.
Make a suggestion, right?
Thank you, guys.
Give them an opening.
What's your step out there?
Yeah,
Right.
it's slick in a few places.
Are we all set for the playground, folks? Those?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Go.
next up on our agenda is an update about the Summit Natural Playground.
So I'll introduce this topic. At your last board meeting in October, we had a presentation about the progress of the Summit Natural Playground Committee. And I thought it was important at that time for administration to meet with the leaders of the group, who are several of the leaders of the group that are here tonight, to begin talking about our partnership and being able to actualize at least some elements of this, since it's been a project that I think's been over a 7-year period. And because of the structure of Summit being a pre-K 3 school, many of the parents have moved on to Fleming, and so it's hard to maintain that excitement and enthusiasm and the conceptual design when the project has lasted over an extended period of time. So I became a little concerned when I knew how much money
they currently had in place and what the next phase would entail. So we met, it was all of the people here that I'll have introduce themselves, and Suzanne can help with that, and Grant and Bruce and myself. So we can give you a little update on where we find ourselves and some thinking about next steps moving forward. Did I capture that okay? Pretty much?
I need people closer to the mic, so.
Yeah, come up.
Yeah, you guys come up.
So there's Nikki and Grace and
We all came together to meet, just to talk about what could things look like, what would a flow of information, flow of direction of the project, the way things currently stood with the project, what are the plans, what the different phases of the plans, could things go in a different order, and just to understand that piece a little bit more and understand that as things move forward, what are some options? And I think that's the option phase that we're in. Did you want to talk any more about that, Rachel? You good?
No, I'm not sure where we want to, I mean, there's how much detail to get into.
right. So it is a complex project. And in your org notes,
Let's say there's several maps about the natural playground. There's one that's titled phasing plan. It might be the best one to look at, that one.
Yep.
And the two squares kind of to the left side of our phase one. And phase one is pretty much done. I mean, some pavers maybe still need to be done. There's a section that's not really in any of the phases that labyrinth. I don't think it's technically in any real phase. But phase one, those two square boxes have pretty much been done. And the discussion was a lot about the fact that circle, the bigger circle that's kind of light colored, that's designated as phase two. And this is the plan that got conceptually approved by the Planning Commission. So that lighter gray circle is kind of phase two. And that's what the committee has basically been trying to push forward and get fundraising efforts rallied around phase two. And the challenge with phase two is it kind of extends beyond that circle because it's the regrading of basically the whole, maybe like the, I don't know, maybe 50% or 40% of the back is needing to be regraded. So the regrading is not just in that circle, but extends over into that kind of other shape that says phase three. You know, it's really that whole area that would be regraded. And the challenges that we talked about were that regrading. I mean, you're basically talking about bringing in a lot more dirt, creating just a whole new grade of that back. And when you do that, it's going to take a while for new grass to grow. I think some of the faculty was a little concerned at one of the meetings about, you know, when you send kids out then next year in the spring or in the fall next year, if they do this over the summer, you send kids out in the fall, it's going to be kind of a mess. And when kids come back in, they're going to be a mess. So there was some concern about just the timing of a phase two. This is the biggest cost, so it would be somewhere on the upper side of $100,000 to do. So phase two is what's kind of been billed as the big step, and I think a lot of the fundraising has been talked, people have been talked to about the fact that phase two is what we want to do next, so there's some expectation, I think, from people who have been involved in this that that's what we're going to do next. But what we had talked about was, you know, maybe it would be nice if we were talking about doing that reversed L shape of what's considered phase five. Maybe you could do that and do that fitness trail, change where the location of the paved walkway is so that you can make use of that slide hill for sledding and things like that during the winter. But that would be less as far as any kind of grading work or anything like that, that'd give you more space so that when you do phase two, maybe there's some room for kids to do to be able to play and do activities during recess. And that circle, that dark circle, is relocating the swing, that dome swing from where it is down a little further. So we were thinking, well, maybe if we could have been talking earlier, maybe we would have talked about maybe making that phase 2 instead of, phase 5. But the challenge is the expectations and what's been talked to people about. So it's not like we really solved any problems, but we did talk about, the challenges of where we find ourselves. But phase 2 would be a pretty big step, and it would take a decent amount of time, and it would take a decent amount of money, which I'm not sure, I think it was over $100,000 we were talking, depending on how you do it, who does it. We also talked about the struggles of too many cooks in the kitchen. If you are going to start asking me all the details about this and want me to start controlling the management of this, it's kind of hard because it's not really our project. It's really the playground committee's project right now. So there's no shortage of challenges.
Complications with it. I also got concerned about fundraising fatigue. I mean, this has been going on for quite some time now. A lot of effort and energy in raising funds, and they're in the midst of kicking off yet another fundraiser with the paver project, which Kathy spoke to you about at the last meeting. And I guess my concern really peaked when, if they didn't have $100,000 to begin the project, which is going to affect an existing playground. So it's not only, it's time-bound too, by a June 1st date and a ready to open, August 15th date, whereas sometimes other playgrounds are built outside of the existing one and only that occurs there. So when a project spans over several years, the excitement begins to wane when you don't see the next phase or something moving forward. So I wanted to see if there was a way or opportunity for property services to partner, which is a very complicated question, with the current playground committee to see if we can do something to keep the momentum moving forward, and to see, as we prepare for budget season this year, if the board would consider allocating some resources towards that project.
Did we find out from last time about that exact question? Who puts the funds towards each school playground? Is it the PTO? Is it the board? Is it the community?
So
whenever you're building a playground, a lot of time it's not uncommon at all for a playground to be built with PTO support. So yeah, that happens a lot. And probably some, if not all of ours, initially when built, were probably built through fundraising efforts and PTO partnerships. Some question was related to like all playground costs. Well, once the playground is built, then you've been funding the maintenance of it, buying new wood chips for fall materials or pea stone for fall materials, and replacing elements that get broken. So yes, I'd say constructing a playground for the first time a lot of times is in association with PTOs, but the upkeep and maintenance is typically something that we have tried to budget for.
But what's different in this particular case is this is not just an ordinary playground that usually has funds raised, somewhere within $40,000 or $50,000 that get generated. It's probably more now.
Yeah, it's a lot more now.
60, 80, whatever.
No.
But it's not a $350,000 project, which this was initially costed out to be. So it's a significantly larger transition than what we would typically do in putting in a new playground. This is a whole new concept, a concept that natural play is something that I think requires a curriculum, and I think Grace speaks to that very well, connection to it. That as time has gone on, not everyone has been in the loop around what a natural playground is and its curricular connection to that, both internal changes within the school with faculty and staff and new parents coming through. So, so there's, like anything, when you're going to make a monumental change, you know, there's some folks that are still very grounded in the existing equipment as well. And so what's important, and I ended our meeting with, what's most important through this process is that we continue to maintain healthy relationships in the Summit community. So how do we move forward in a way that respects all opinions, that we can, that's affordable, that's phased in a way that is fiscally responsible and sustainable, and is accessible during a June 15th
July
sort of
1.
time frame.
Actually, July 1 if we're using general
Yeah.
funds, July 1 to August 15th.
Plus, these are parent volunteers, and bless them for the time they've invested in this. But it's, I mean, we have people employed to do this kind of work because of the intensity and the time requirements for it. And as their students are starting to age out too, you know, how do we keep the work sustainable moving forward? So it's been, it's in a place where I was happy to come together, you know, at least to put the concerns on the table and say, you know, how can we, and we've only had one meeting. We have plans for another meeting, because there's a lot to have to talk through the transition. We've generated questions. We generated after that meeting another list of questions. So we're all knowledgeable now moving forward of exactly what the status is. But I think that it's important to hear from the people that have been doing this work over an extended period of time, one of which is landscape artists, to give you some of the background, the conceptual background behind it, because I have this feeling that to move forward, they're going to need board support at a time when your resources are going to also be competing. So, you know, how do we reach a middle ground on some of those pieces, but still keep the intent alive and moving forward in some way, shape, or form?
Can I ask you some questions, Judy?
You surely can.
So you mentioned this whole plan totally is going to come to about $350,000.
That was the Natural Playground Company's cost estimate.
Yeah, and since then,
in
there's
2011.
There's been a lot of modifications, and the price has come down.
What's the number now then?
We know for the phase 2 portion, it's about $100,000.
Do we have a cost breakout for each phase? Do we know that?
There was one done a while back.
Well, we redesigned phase 2 specifically to try to make it more manageable, and that cost breakdown has been provided. We did provide that at the beginning.
Yeah. That's right.
Really specifically, and as we move forward, we intend to do the same thing for every phase as we plan them out.
So they provided like the infrastructure and landscaping, the structural elements moving forward. I can pass that around so you get some idea of the
In
cost.
this plan, you've got preschoolers that have to use the playground. Are you going to separate them?
We're going to maintain preschool.
They are separated now.
Yeah.
They're separated now. Is that going to maintain? Are you upgrading their area?
No.
No, just, so they're not considered part of Summit Street and the natural playground?
Well, I mean,
it would be nice to include that, but in this particular plan, it's not part of that. I mean, there are definitely things you could do in a preschool playground to bring in the natural playground elements. I mean, I designed a playground for the St. Michael's preschool, you know, added some stuff there, and that is something you can do. It's just not a part of this particular plan when the natural playground, and again, you have to remember that we are all parents who've kind of come into this after all this happened, and we're just sort of picking up the ball and running with it. So at the time that it was designed, this is the area that was designed by the Natural Playground Company, and that preschool space was not included in that design.
So there's got to be a happy medium where I think that not every child might enjoy all of these aspects. I assume there's some that would want to be swinging and climbing and doing the regular structures, and like you said, to take out that and slowly add things in. And then what do the seasons do for this? What happens when the snow comes? What's taken away? With the mud, what happens then? So I guess seeing more things like this would be good to gauge kind of what we're looking at here, and be able to see what money, if we put towards it, what are we really, what are they getting for it, and can we do that whole, that how much is really needed.
My main concern involves finances right now, Grant. The way the state is going and the taxes we know are jumping a huge jump again, how does the playground, like if we invest money in this as a board versus fundraising, if we put this in the budget as a board, we're going to have to include it in that
Excess spending threshold?
Yes, it is. And how close are we coming to that?
I'm not sure yet, because, I mean, we haven't finalized staffing, so I got a long way to go to see how close we are.
And I gotta tell you, if we're getting close, or that spending threshold, the way the state has got this funding mechanism, an example is one of the municipal meetings I went to, Grand Isle. They had a shortage of $50,000. That $50,000 they had to put in their budget last year doubled their tax rates, doubled it in Grand Isle. They're going to even double again. So when you get close to that spending threshold, we're talking about having to save teachers' jobs, not, I gotta say it, not playgrounds. We're going to really have to save teachers' jobs. That's what it's coming down to.
But we're not there yet, and we don't know where we are yet. So I think the more important thing is really practical, matter. The request last month was for $5,000 this year, put 20 in the budget, right? Just to get really practical, right? So now one thing you just said was, and that was kind of focused on helping the money for phase 2. So, is there a new request? Did you guys might not have gotten there yet, but it sounded like you were thinking $10,000 for phase 5 instead of phase 2, changing or something.
Right.
Is that where we're going?
We did get to a tentative place. I mean, like, we
Real
met
practical.
from like only 3 hours.
Right, yeah,
probably.
tentative, even
So,
tentative, right.
and I wanted to bring it forward because one of the things that you've given me as a deadline is anything new coming into the budget you wanted to know by your December meeting. So they were gracious enough to meet on a last minute notice, and we talked through many pieces, and then they followed up with questions from people who have been involved longer. Bruce was also, Murdo was also very helpful in the process. And I really understand the passion of phase 2, because that's really the big earth moving and the thing that's really going to change the
look and feel of the
playground. It's also the most costly element. So, we talked, I don't know if we reached consensus, but I'll tell you what we talked about. We talked about, in fact, why don't you talk about it, because you can talk about it in terms of an estimate
Yeah, I
of
think
cost.
the two specific things that I think I heard of asking the school board to cover is, if you look at that drawing, along the bottom you see the thicker line. you know, the thicker line that kind of goes up
Yep.
and then comes back down. What that is that existing paved walkway from the lower lot up to the storage shed, to change where that is going to go, so that it kind of follows the contour of the bottom of the hill. And that way, then, you can have that whole hill for like sledding or whatever. So to change that, where that paved walkway goes, it goes pretty much
Oh,
straight
I
up.
get you. Right, okay, yes.
From the parking lot.
Yeah, this is that lower
Yep.
parking lot.
By the church.
Yeah.
No, the church is over
Oh,
here.
I'm
This
sorry,
is-
I'm sorry.
This is our
That's the
parking lot.
small parking lot.
So it's the path right now goes
Straight.
like this.
Yep.
And so therefore, if you push this path out, you get more of that sledding hill, accessibility to the sledding hill.
And so that's one piece that they asked for. And I'm going to give you some budget numbers, and please don't hold me to them. But we got a quick estimate on how much it might cost to pull up the existing paving, or the asphalt or whatever that's there, and to move it the way the drawing shows. And it's probably about $10,000 as far as just changing that whole thing. The other thing that was discussed was taking the dome swing set from the existing playground, within the boundaries of the existing playground, and moving it down further towards the church, which that's probably visible on here too. Yeah.
So right now, it's about, right about here. So we
Yep.
down here toward the church.
And that's a bigger question mark as far as cost go. If we bring in a backhoe and move it ourselves, then that cost isn't real big. Most of the cost would probably be just backfilling with fall materials, you know, like wood chips or whatever. I'd say that piece is probably somewhere between 5 and 10. So the number that was thrown out before of $20,000, if we put $20,000 into the budget, I think we have a good chance of being able to do those two pieces of this project. As far as the 5,000 from this year or whatever, I don't want to get into that, because that's like if we have surplus this year, that you
Right.
can't really use that for next year as far as general funds go. So that really is going to just go into a future year fund balance. But if you wanted me to plug $20,000 in, those are two pieces that we could do. And maybe the approach is to see how we go with fundraising, to see how much we get. But if we at least did that, I think that postures you to have a bigger perimeter open and available for kids to play, so that whenever phase 2 happens, that at least there's some more place for kids to be during recess. I mean, maybe we end up having to rope off that big area in the middle. I don't know. And I'm not sure how much confidence you have that you would actually get the kind of money that you need for phase 2 on July 1, you know, but at least those are two tangible pieces that if you told me to do it, we could take on those two pieces and not be stepping on each other's toes.
So we weren't gonna initially move the swing set. Now, I remember that we said that we would keep, at least for Jim and other children, a specific field. Does that change that because of it?
Now, the whole lower part of this, even though there's some lines that show that there's a slope there, but the whole lower part of the property is fairly flat and would still be available as an open field.
The field is actually.
It's right there, yeah.
It's right here.
Okay.
And there's, if you look here, it's sketched.
Right.
And so there could be some excitement that we're still kind of moving in that direction. It gives the playground committee more time to raise the money for the original phase 2 concept. It gives an opportunity, what do we call that path? A fitness path? Is that the?
Challenge path.
Challenge path. You know, that as we move forward, looking at the different elements that are available from natural playgrounds to consider installing, like you were talking about, the swings and things like that, so that it gives the children time for their play to change on a new structure as well. So it's really up to the playground committee to want to talk about switching their plan as planned, and working with us as far as what we can do and what you can do as a board if you so desire to allocate funds to help them get a little closer along the way and keep momentum going.
So in the 7 years that it's been coming to fruition here, how much has actually been raised? Do we know?
So the total is 40,000, but 25,000 has already been spent. The plan that was purchased by the Natural Playgrounds Company, phase 1, other aspects with, I can't give you exact detail, but pretty significant investment in this master plan through that purchase. That's the big bulk of what's been spent. So right now we have $15,000 that we're sitting on, and we're moving, keeping the momentum going with other fundraisers, and we hope to bring that total up.
It does seem too that the fundraising is in a different place than it was. Like
Right.
before, it was like bake sales and cookbooks.
Yeah.
You can't raise $100,000 for that.
Yeah.
So we've kind of entered a new phase where we're hoping with this paver program to, raise $40,000 for that.
So would you take the 15,000 you now have, put it into this, and ask us for 5? And that's where we're coming up with 20, or are we asking for
No.
more?
20 from out, they gotta
20
keep,
from
and I mean, I'm concerned about, maybe this was in your discussions already, sticking the 20 into that
Right.
essentially now takes it out of
Yeah.
getting into the real chunk of money needed to to do all the site work, which is
Exactly.
what that really phase 2 really is. So it actually makes it harder, even though it lines up nicely to something,
But could we use
Do
that
it
15?
doable.
So we're, and then we put in a little bit now to get it still going? Or, I guess would be my question.
Well, I think we want to, I think we want to, this is really an add. Like, we want to add board, putting in a chunk, are we really, I think that's our question is, this is what, parents at Summit came up with. I think the parents still believe in it. I think the PTO still believes in it. This is the, and so much about this is so great for the direction to go in, right? To have as a resource for the kids at Summit and for the whole community, right? That's what we're saying. The board would really be saying, yeah, we agree, and we believe in it, and we're willing to put it, try to put money in there. Essentially, I think today we're trying to decide on guidance for grant to try to start with this in there. And then, of course, we're going to evaluate it through the budget process. So practically speaking, that's what we're doing, trying to give
Right.
good guidance today.
Right.
That way we've got a starting point.
That's correct.
And it's
It
not
may not
something-
end up in there finally, but.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I was gonna say, is
Right.
it's really, I was basically gonna ask, is it okay for me to, at least on a first cut, put in 20,000?
Right.
We'll see how the numbers come out, if you're not comfortable with it, then we scale it back
Go
and take
from
it
there.
out. But at least we would have something in there, and at least we would start working on the perimeter. And I think, I don't think at this point, I don't think anybody sitting here wants to go back and say, we're not gonna do phase 2 now. But after more fundraising, if that ends up being, if we end up saying, you know what, realistically, I don't know that we're gonna be able to get that much money, then maybe at that point, you can go back and say, you know what, let's put in natural elements along a challenge path. And then, because there is a little bit of divisiveness as far as some people like the traditional playground, which would come out. So, I don't know. I think at least this avoids us from having to do that right now and make that call. It puts in a nice element. It allows us to use that hill. It puts in that structure, that perimeter. I will tell you that, from an urgency perspective, I know the playground is getting old, but I did have a natural playground, not a natural playground, a certified playground inspector came in and looked at the playground, and there were no big problems. There's some spot welding that could be done. There's some changing some S-hooks, closing those gaps, additional fall materials, which is part of the routine maintenance. Ironically, the biggest problem they had was with the dome swing set. Technically, that dome swing set is not really set up the way it should be, because all the kids, if you know that dome swing set, they all swing into the center. And so technically, if you were to ask, is that dome swing structure really, appropriate? I think you would never see that being built and put in, but, I mean, we've not
We
had
got
any
it.
issues.
Never had
We've
an
got it, so
accident.
I don't have a problem
We haven't
moving it and keeping it. But honestly, that was, when I read the report, that ironically was the one thing that they had a problem with, which is the one element that we're keeping. But at any rate, if you're comfortable, I can at least for now plug in the 20 for those two specific pieces. I do get concerned about the earth moving when we get to that point, because if I take that on, then we're gonna need to bid and get different multiple bids. If they do it, then they could probably go with one, with the playground company, the natural playground company, without having to bid it. But once I take it over, I have to bid it by law.
Yep.
So there are some of those things that we would have to really kind of work through once we get to a phase 2. I'm just concerned that July 1st is coming real fast for us to be able to sort all that out.
Question on, I think I heard you say you went through the planning commission and you've been approved for phase 2.
I think, again, none of us were here when that all happened, but we believe that the concept of the whole plan has been approved.
Yeah.
But we will have to go in separately to do phase 2, and/or if we're gonna do other parts.
For
we're
anything
probably
that's the
gonna have
next
go
thing
in.
to be
Yeah.
done, you have to go
So
back to get
this,
that approved.
this concept was approved
Right.
and phase 1 was permitted. I mean,
Right.
we got a permit for phase 1. Depending on what we do next, we may or may not need to go back. Like if I'm just
Oh,
moving
right.
that dome swing structure,
We don't
and if
need
I'm
to
just relocating the
Right.
paved walkway, I don't think I have to go
You don't need
back.
to,
As
right.
the owner, we're allowed to do those things. It really, whenever we get into regrading, is whenever I think we need to make sure we go back and get everybody to approve
Right.
that. Because that's whenever you get into all the concerns that people have with drainage and what's below the ground and damage that could be done. That's whenever those questions come up. So before we do the regrading piece, we definitely would need to go back and get another approval. But if we're just talking about doing little elements along the way or changing where the pavement is, I mean, I would talk to Bruce to make sure that he, gets a head nod from a few people just to make sure that we're not overstepping, but I don't think we would be.
Okay. Well, I think, as a whole, I think we're fine. I think we're okay to give the guidance
Put the
and
20 in.
And then
to see the
what it looks
numbers.
like when we
Yeah,
look
and
at
I
it.
don't want to promise that I'll keep it in there when we do budget. I mean,
Right. But it's certainly a lot
I know-
easier to get it in now
Yeah.
than it is
Yeah,
to try and
let's
get it
try
in.
to put it
I
3 months
know,
from now.
Jen, I don't think you were there at our last CCSU. Our percentage of our assessment that Essex Junction has to pay to central office now, we're taking a huge increase this year because we added staff last year, so it's rebounding on us this year. So I think when you see the budget, there's going to be some pieces there that are going to affect our decisions.
And I will tell you, I'm not going to tell you right now every increase that you're going to see in the budget. But as far as like projects or big pieces, like I can't tell you all the staffing adjustments that you're going to see. There's going to be some increases there too.
Yeah.
But as far as the big thing for me is that I have what I need to be able to put it into a
Right.
first cut for you. If I haven't seen it by the time you see a first cut, it's too late basically. But as long as I'm aware of it and we're working on things, you will see some staffing adjustments on the order of increases because we still have, we're not having declining enrollment. That's the good news though, we don't have declining enrollment. So our equalized pupil count's not going down, which helps our tax rate. The other piece of kind of good news, depending on how you look at it, is since universal pre-K, the law has been pushed back a year.
We don't have
The idea is that statewide, the cost won't go, the base rate won't have to go up because statewide costs won't go up dramatically. We're still in good shape and we're still going to keep making steps to get to universal preschool. And basically, you could pretty much say that we're going to be in compliance anyway.
Right.
But since the rest of the
First,
state
already.
doesn't have to, the estimate is that the base rate is not going to go up 5 cents. As a matter of fact, now they're thinking it may only go up 2 cents, which would be great. It'd be great if it wasn't going up at all, but 2 cents is a lot better than the 5 cents that I was afraid we were going to face. So those are just a couple.
The unknown there,
tidbits.
though, is how many districts are prepped now to move forward, so that
Right.
estimates.
might keep
still-
going anyway,
Yeah,
right, right.
estimates.
Yep.
So, it's all, and as I said before, there's no shortage of good ideas and great ways to invest taxpayers' money. I think this is one of those ways. And I just think it would be helpful if we were strategic partners in some way, shape, or form with this group, so that as their children continue to age out, there's some semblance, and the transition with a new principal coming in as well, really left the parent volunteers, near a state of exhaustion. So, it's important.
And just so there's no confusion, it's $100,000 to get a big structure like the one that is on that playground.
Yeah.
I mean, we did the research, that was a big part of the research that we did, right? It is $100,000. It is essentially.
Even more if you're gonna talk
Oh.
about accessible structure, like
Right.
right now, your structure is completely inaccessible to anyone that has a disability. So if you wanted to get an accessible structure, it's gonna be more than that, so just want you to be aware of that.
So if you say, if it comes up, no more natural playground, and someone wants to, and now a new group of parents wants to come in, they're facing the same essential big financial hurdle to do that. So that is really not that different, is what.
Except that right now you have a playground that is maybe not accessible to all, but it is in repair. I mean, it's not that you have a playground that's, not functional, so.
That playground that's there at Summit Street now was Brian Doobie and Kevin Dorans of the world. They were all in there building it one summer. It was the volunteers doing it. Central office might have had some part of it, but I know they were hunting for volunteers. It was definitely a hands-on. So I remember we didn't get board money, and I think Fleming's PTO, they had volunteers putting it in.
Right.
So
Just wanted to take a second to really thank the PTO, the National Playground being a subset of the PTO, but also remember, I think the things that, aren't as obvious that we don't see because we don't have large meetings that are sort of announced to everybody, is every need we have, I go to these folks and say, whether it is we're coming upon cold weather, really need to get snowsuits and boots and everything on kids instantly. We have a drive, we have them in kids' hands, we have them, labeled with their names on them and on people, tell them, with a free and reduced lunch rate close to 30, we have a lot of kids that we are really worried in the 16 days of break that we normally feed them breakfast and lunch every day, and right away organized into, we have 20 break boxes that we are in the midst of assembling, and the PTO put this all together for us. Just say, I said, really need new toothbrushes and toothpaste going home with kids. Right, we have 250 toothbrushes and toothpaste and dental health supplies getting ready, and these folks putting together goodie bags to make sure that all of our students just have that access to everything that they need every day. And those are the quiet things that they do every day that's not part of the announcements at PTO meetings, and not part of we typically see the things that are coming home about fundraising, but those things are happening every day as well. And I just really want to say thank you, because it is a really amazing place to be with our PTO. And all the events that you hear about in the principals report, the fun run, the spaghetti dinner that gives us a place to come together as a community and for families to make connections. Those are all PTO sponsored events.
I think when we discuss the red discussion, the redistricting discussion, I have stated that if deciding what we do in the future, if we do something with Town of Essex and become one district, I have told people I'm not worried about local control of schools, because in my heart, even when my son was in school, it's your PTOs and PTAs that determine the direction of each individual school. And that will still occur no matter what, and it's a blessing to the community. It really is. So
you'll probably hear.
Huh?
Sorry.
We transition to our next topic.
Well, I was just going to say, you'll probably still continue to hear more about the brick and paver project going on, and it's still going forward through the lens of still raising money for the natural playground, and they'll be framing the conversation about the exact use of that as far as what phase or however they're going to state it, but I don't want you to be confused if you still see a major fundraiser going forward in addition to the request.
Right.
Speaking of that, one more question. When you're doing the brick and you're out fundraising, are you getting lists of alumni, past alumni that graduated from Summit Street? I mean, you could go back to the Essex High School.
We're hoping to, yeah. I mean, I don't think we.
Yeah, for some reason that information's been difficult to get.
But you can get hold of the Essex High School alumni, and you can figure out which kids went. Like, for instance, I've got I got two stepdaughters that went through there. Are they getting a letter asking for donations? Summit Street was their favorite school. I bet they'd donate.
Yeah, I mean, we had that conversation with Mary about getting alumni lists, and it just wasn't, there was no comprehensive way to get that information. So a couple of my neighbors gave me old Summit Street school directories, and that's really all I have from, like, random years, but nothing comprehensive that's anywhere to be found.
There's really no records, Marla,
Be an
for the high school.
alumni group.
There's no alumni, there's no real alumni group. There's no organized group. Each class can organize one, but it's totally ad hoc. I mean, there is nothing at the school or in U46, or there's no I'm not kidding. There is no organized, something where it's centrally
Not
located.
like where I went to school.
And I mean, unless Judy, correct me if I'm wrong, unless you're keeping track of the PC, the four schools,
No,
I don't think we keep track
alumni
of the alumni.
books that the PTOs created.
That's it.
That's all
Yeah,
that
we don't keep track.
individualized record keeping.
And in recent history, the challenge you have is even if you had something that was all the Essex Junction graduates from Essex High School, I mean, not all of them went to Summit Street, some of them came here. So,
Right, you'd have to weed out.
Yeah, so there's
That's
no
just
easy way to get that.
Okay, so I just want to wrap this up real quick. Grant, you have what you need? Okay.
20 grand
And
to
then
start.
I want to thank you guys for continuing this on. My wife and I, we started on the playground when our kids were kindergarten. So they're in 7th grade now. So
Yeah.
so I know it's been a process.
journey.
So thank you guys for keeping it going.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Should we talk more soon?
We'll keep you updated.
Yes.
That helped. Thank you.
Red, let's do it.
All right. Next up is our continuing discussion on forming a regional education district.
So, there's been a date when established, which will be Tuesday, December 16th. Again, Essex Police
We did set.
Station, yeah.
Okay.
We confirmed that location.
6:30.
Where the 16th, where
6:30.
all 3 boards, Westford, Prudential Committee, and Essex Town will meet. Again, to review the formation of a study committee. This time we will have for you the composition of the membership of the committee that's apportioned by your ADM. So we've
Just so we
met
know.
with Mark Andrews, Superintendent Andrews, and Kim Gleason from Essex Town Board, Mark Drop, and myself, and the recommendation will be a 20-member study committee with 10 from Essex Town, 8 from Prudential Committee, and 2 from Westford. And the second part of the motion that you can consider that evening will be the amount of budgeted money to put forward for the study. And I've been working with Von Altimus at the state, and I still need to get legal opinion on, because of our eligibility for 2 study grants, both of which have a $20,000 amount allocated for study. Up to for both grants. Just, we cannot by statute make a motion more than 25,000, because if it were more than 25,000, you'd have to bring it to your taxpayer. So this is where the statutes haven't kept pace with the new legislation. So it might be 2 separate motions.
2 motions or something.
Yeah, to
different
say
boards or
20,000 from this one grant and then 20,000 from this other grant.
whatever.
All the- Yeah,
Right,
not
because
to
one
exceed.
motion would be to form a single district, the other would be to eliminate
An
an SU. So it would be two separate motions.
Right,
Because it's
so-
two separate actions.
So I'm getting all that legality worked out before you are to meet. I know that at Westford School Board's meeting last Monday night, they did a straw poll to see what position they would have on moving forward with a study. They were actually having the conversation after they had a group of community members who were charged by the electorate to form a study committee around sustainability. So they received a sustainability report that night as well. And the sustainability report included learning more about the formation of a RED or unification.
Okay, great.
So it was unanimous that night that they felt committed to forming a study committee. So that would mean that we wouldn't be in that awkward place of what do you do if somebody doesn't study. They would be deemed advisable as they were last time, which means that if Essex Junction and Essex Town community after the study, if it goes forward to the community and the communities say yes, that means you can form a RED, just those two districts. And if Westford chooses not to, there's some options for them, which could be possibly being assigned to another SU, because you would have eliminated your SU, so there's no SU for them to be assigned to. So they understand that, and that's why they want to be involved, at least in seeing, what would they look like as part of it, because they're distinctly different. They're a different community, they're a different size, there's a lot of differences there. So I'm happy that all of our board members are open to learning more. And I think that in this day and age of, some of the comments Marla made earlier about competing resource needs and taxpayers being in a position where they have to pay penalties and the excess control spending and all of the pieces to keep our budgets as level as possible. It's incumbent upon us that we do that. So I think that moving forward will give us an opportunity to learn more about what the possibilities of a RED could create for our kids, as far as sustainability of programs, and as far as some time for our taxpayers to be advantaged by some of the tax incentives that have been created for districts to voluntarily merge.
Right. So Michael, just in prep for the meeting, right, my vote is, probably more than half of our discussion at the last meeting was actually not about deciding to form a study committee. It was actually about the RED itself.
Right.
So that should be, let's really try to, if you can give guidance at the beginning of the meeting that is not what we're there to discuss. It should be really short, especially if we already know going into it, Westford's probably in a good place. Right, it's really just formality, getting back together with those formal details, and then to make our motions and vote on forming the study committee. All the other stuff is going to happen from the study committee.
Right.
Let
I
them
anticipate this
do
meeting
all that.
being relatively brief.
Yeah.
But it needs to be one that we're all present for.
No, right.
Versus a phone-in kind of a meeting.
Yeah. Got to do it.
Has there been communication around this meeting? Because I haven't seen
Not
it.
yet.
No,
Well, we didn't have a place yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's being warned tomorrow, probably.
So
Yeah,
I'm
we're
going to
gonna
put something
meet?
out and
Front porch forum.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I won't be able to get anything in the paper, but
Where are we meeting?
gonna be at the police station.
I
It's
like
6:30,
that
right?
location.
Yeah.
6:30. It's still
Yes.
okay.
I
Good.
like that.
One of the things for you to think about is there needs to be a board member assigned to the
Yep.
study committee. So talk amongst yourselves about what that could look like. And then the other thing you,
Get that? I get the
and then
finger.
the other thing you need to think about
There's
is.
no Marlo pointing at Tim.
I'm pointing at Tim before someone points at you.
No, okay. And then the other thing is,
Study committee membership
right, it's
from
membership.
the community.
Yep.
Right, we
And then
would
this
pick our
meeting
member, we have to pick our people.
will only be, the U46 will not need to be present.
Yeah,
that
right,
board.
what we said last time.
But we'll invite them.
I think
if
Liz said
anybody
she's
wants to
coming
come.
when I talked to her.
Yeah, so,
But
Just
what
gonna
we'll
try to.
provide to you probably at that meeting in addition would be a template of some kind of a letter of intent that you could send out to the broader community and
Mhm.
ask people if they're interested in serving on the committee, since you're going to need to have 7 representatives.
right.
To send you a letter of intent of their interest. And so I think that's some of the next steps moving forward of getting a committee actually formed.
Because then our specific discussion would be, do we have any specific groups within our 8 that we would like to have on that committee, I would think.
Well, exactly, I think
You
we
know,
wanna
And
think
ask
about
people
who we
what
wanna have
member.
on it and
Youth,
ask people.
you know, whatever, I mean, however we want to have that makeup, that's, would be our specific discussion, I would think.
So then, do we determine if we get this list and there's so many that want to be involved, do we cut that down and we specifically choose?
From your letter of
Yeah.
intent.
Yep.
So you'll be looking for the criteria.
That would be great, I hope we get that.
Yeah,
That was up.
I hope that's that's the decision we
I
have to
would
make.
love to go through a list of 100 people,
Yes,
because they're so engaged.
that's, all right. Okay, so next up is,
Thank you, Grant. Have a
oh
good
yes,
night.
thank you,
Thanks,
Grant.
Thank you.
We'll be seeing plenty of you soon.
Yeah,
I know.
soon enough, next month.
So, we are going to briefly, we're way behind, but let's briefly go through the task team updates.
Yeah, communications, we're just waiting for this red thing to go down, and then that's what we think.
That's gonna be your focus.
That's what we think our
Yeah.
focus is gonna be, is to try to help do it, and do it, actually reform, and reform with Essex Town members included, because now,
Right.
that's what we have to communicate is with everybody, so.
So we'll dissolve the original team
Right,
and recreate a new communications, or we called it a public relations.
yeah, kind of a
To
public.
communicate what's happening with the study, because last time that was part of the problem, is
Right.
people
That's-
got too much information at the end to absorb.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and that would include students, because we have students currently on the communications team.
Yep.
And so when Sue McCormick? Is that her
Yep.
name? McCormick presented at the red discussion about the public relations component, having another board member on the communications or public relations team working closely, that would give us 3 board members on the committee, and then 3 board members communicating, so almost half of our boards.
Right.
There'd be some representation and communication and keeping the boards abreast.
Right, right, and I think, and Liz plans to stay on it, so even though, you
Okay.
know, she won't be on the, or I guess she could still be on, even on the study committee too, if she wanted, but anyway.
The only piece I had a question about with the dissolution and maybe focusing more on public relations is the budget communications piece of communications. That was always a big chunk. How we
But did the
planning to
committee do
address
it,
that?
but did the committee really do any of it?
Yeah, we did.
So do you
Well,
think,
okay, take that back. Ben and / Cindy did a lot of putting together all the numbers and everything like that, but we had the last couple of years, we had a little more focus on board actions or activities of putting out budget information prior to, the annual meeting itself. So that we would, there was more of a proactive approach of getting the information out to folks in chunks rather than just, here you go, read it,
No,
come
yeah,
back, ask
no, I know.
questions.
You don't
So,
think
But
that's-
if we know what to do, if we can adopt what we did last year and
Right.
just kind of, I think that's the way we kind
I
of
think we
quickly
were
talked
thinking
about it.
exactly that we've used the budget as a strategic communication plan with the steps moving forward, so I think we have that pretty well ironed out, and maybe at board meetings, we can just talk about those elements of the communication going forward.
And that's fine, and we can take that, I mean, we can
It's
bring that, I
important,
guess,
though,
back
thanks.
into
I think
our board a
that
little bit more.
brochure that's done with the boards, I thought that was valuable when it comes home instead of
Yep.
Yeah,
just
something
a
short and
little-
Doing
sweet.
that, we've always done that, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
so, okay, good.
Yep, great.
Leaders at work. We didn't have a quorum. We were missing one board having representation, so we weren't able to take any action. So we're going to have the same agenda where we're talking about annual work plan and adapting the timeline, all the usual things. Nothing new to report.
Right. And just glomming onto that a little bit, anything you all can give to me as far as, toward the annual work plan, as we put in here, in your org notes, will assist me in writing up a formative assessment, as well as for the
Yeah.
needs assessment piece of this process.
We are behind on doing the formative piece, so if we can get it to Mike as soon as possible.
And I can send you something
Okay,
out.
need help, because what am I supposed to be?
Right.
About this year's stuff already? We're already
This
evaluating
year's.
this year's stuff on stuff that was already done.
Correct, to a limited extent.
But just, I have to
But
go
not-
through each of those lines and try to figure out something from each of them, or what's the?
No, just, I guess a limited amount of feedback from, as an individual, up to this, just to this point, like a mid-year,
Oh, okay.
that's all
Okay,
we're doing, like
got
a
it.
mid-year
That's all I need to
assessment.
know. Yep,
Yeah.
So we-
Something simple, but,
yeah.
So we put
Yeah.
the annual work plan in your org notes.
Yep,
And
saw it.
in it, on the flip side of it,
It tells the
you're
number,
good.
right.
It aligns that with the superintendent's evaluation piece.
Yep.
So when you go, for example, let's use communications for an example. It's standard 2, elements 2 and 4. So then you would go to your standard 2, and you look at elements 2 and 4.
Yeah.
And those are the two that are being evaluated.
So that's what we need to give feedback on.
And that's-
Yes.
That's what I was trying to
And-
get, that's
and
what I was trying to
that's
get.
exactly
Yeah.
how it
that's all,
is.
yeah.
Right.
I was gonna give you more
Okay,
guidance
got it.
in an email,
Okay.
but essentially, that's what I'd be looking for.
The
Yep.
formative assessment being behind,
Eventually
it's
we'll learn how to do
the
it.
assessment that pretty much lets the superintendent know how they're doing and how they can improve if we need to do an improvement
If there's
plan.
something
Yeah,
that, right.
it's just where we are now.
It's mid-year review.
Yep, exactly,
review.
okay.
Yeah.
Policy?
Policy was canceled,
Okay,
and I can't make the next one. We
Awesome.
switched the
No
dates,
update.
so I won't be able to go, so I'm gonna make sure Dave can,
okay.
so.
And like, I guess let me know if if that is not possible, and I
What
can
date
always
is
appoint somebody
policy?
else, I guess, for a
Policy
meeting.
it's the 17th, so it's the day after. our
December
red-
17th is policy, and
Yep.
what are you working on in policy?
We're just doing J policies right now. Just
Mike, if you need someone to go, call me.
But that's what I'm saying,
It's
if
usually
necessary,
6 to 8.
I can appoint somebody, or, well, I can appoint myself too.
You
so.
can, you're,
I'll email him tonight.
All right.
Just one thing that we are doing is, if you wondered why you had colored font after some of the org notes, we just wanted to provide you with
Putting it
the
out.
evidence of where some of this information correlates to the superintendent's evaluation and
Right.
the annual work plan. So if you look at it, you'll be able to see, oh yeah, that's the part that
Right, and that was something we'd
Connects.
added on so that
the last meeting.
anybody can provide information. They have, kind of the correlation of various pieces of work to where it went to the annual work plan, and then it just enhances everybody's ability to provide feedback and
Right.
give additional information.
Yeah, I guess it's in,
Assessment process.
I guess it's in there, and I'll have to look through it again, but it's like, I think it's still a real open question. Take the kneecap science. What does accountability mean? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question
Right.
still. Is that on the, who's accountable? What does being accountable mean? If it's not going in the direction we want, what does that mean? We have to have actions, or what's the, I think we
think you
don't
heard-
really know. I don't think we have an agreement yet about what that means, and that
Yeah.
way we know, okay, this is what it's gonna mean going forward. Okay, good, you know, we know if it goes like this happens. If it goes like this, this happens.
Well,
you
in
know.
your principal's reports, though, they were clear about what their actions are gonna be.
I think so. I mean, I
Yeah.
think we're getting like kind of like
Yeah.
the specific action. So I think we got that, but it's just, I don't know, you know, it's like we
It's
always
like-
have actions.
Yeah.
Even if it's good, we're gonna have actions. So like, is that all we need?
Yeah,
I
we're gonna
don't-
shift, that's what's happened, you know, so we'll have a common assessment that they talked about. We'll have those results of a local common assessment.
Yeah, that's, I mean.
So we'll have something.
And
So they're
just on the
moving.
helping us communicate, that's what we need. Right?
The annual work plan, if we have a quorum this week on Wednesday night, we will be putting goals and some dates onto the annual work plan.
Okay, so there you go. That was the
And
feedback
who's
into
responsible.
that. So
There
if
you
you
go.
guys can talk about that, then that will help.
Yeah, if we have
Great.
school on Wednesday.
Great.
Right.
Have
See
a
how
big
that works
storm.
out.
Okay.
Okay, so, you have to
gonna-
take off, right?
Yep, but if we can pick a date, the next one is date for next meeting, so then I could try to do that before I go.
For the appreciative inquiry?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Not next meeting, appreciative inquiry, yeah.
So,
Oh, I like the idea that just to put it off until.
well, that's kind of what we, well, in discussions I've had with various folks is that, that perhaps it's in our best interest as a board to continue the appreciative inquiry process after the board's been reorganized. Because as far as I know,
Yep.
we're going to lose at least one board member that's currently on this board
Yep, yep.
in April.
Yep.
And so, since we only did one meeting of a scheduled 3, I think it makes
We'll
sense
catch them on the next
to
new
put that off till we've till we've got the new board member in place, and possibly even look at part of our planning day. You know, we do our planning day, but part of that whole day is maybe to do the appreciative inquiry. I don't know that that's going to work out the best. I mean, because that means for a long day.
Yep.
But that's one option.
Yep.
But anyway, it's looking at,
Oh, okay, so.
let's find some dates after April.
It makes sense based on all of the new meetings we're gonna have as well, the budget meetings we're gonna be having.
And also our
Yeah,
focus
January
maybe,
would
I
be
mean,
difficult anyway, and you're into February.
Yeah.
So
So
You know,
maybe
we may
a
have a different
couple months
focus.
away.
Yeah, so April
Yeah.
sounds good to me.
you know, so as a board, so. Everybody good with that?
Okay,
I don't have a
great.
specific date in mind right now.
So let's
We
just
can-
come
we
back
can
to
get
it
to
in the
that.
spring.
Until April.
Okay,
I put
yeah.
down.
Yep,
All right,
We're gonna
great.
put it off until April.
great.
Does Tim want to say something about these two? since
Oh,
it's-
le- let's just jump, because Tim's has to take off. We're going to jump to the Essex Democracy and Youth Forum, that's where we talked about the voting.
Yep.
And I don't know what kind of impressions you got from that particular meeting or activity.
So you guys should see soon, because I think we're trying to close it by the end of the year, is like the report of it and the recommendations from the committee. I've got like kind of a draft of it, but it's some of the stuff kind of makes sense. There's a lot about transparency, that there's like common themes. So it's going to be, there's stuff about transparency, there's stuff about effective communication. I mean, the same issues we struggle with, around. And part of it's related even, because it's about the voting and the budgets. And so, yeah, that does come from the school. People were talking about them somewhat interchangeably, although it was more focused on the government and town meeting.
Right.
It wasn't clear that there isn't, so the way that it looks is there's not really any big consensus driving in a certain direction, that it's really spread out across other options besides town meeting. So nothing really major was coming out of that, but there's some like guiding, kind of things, right? So, and then neighborhood, there's kind of a thing, there was a theme going on about getting, people more involved, and then that might happen by neighborhoods or something. So, if you think all through the town, so that could be interesting. Okay, what comes out of that? So, I mean, I think it was a lot of stuff like kind of separate but related from total like board stuff, but like, okay, on the transparency and on the information and communication, okay, all those themes obviously apply to us too.
Right.
So, okay, and then in terms of going for one day, you know, we might ultimately, going for one vote, all voting on one day, you know, we would ultimately be, you know, that's probably something we would have to start looking at is what's driving our school vote. When we vote on the budget, what are, you know, a lot of towns do it on town meeting day. You know, and so why are we doing it where we're doing it? Well, you know, that's something we would ultimately have to look at. And I mean, if that comes as a recommendation,
Right.
essentially it's going to come right from the select board and the trustees back to us to say, hey guys, okay, yeah, we want to, they might say we want to do it. Okay, well then we're going to have to get involved in terms
Right.
of how we do things. When is our annual meeting? When is our, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah, as Tim said, the focus was a bit more on town village type things. However, you know, and perhaps Tim did the same thing. We were divided up into maybe 7 or 8 groups, and in my particular group, and maybe Tim's also, you know, I did ask various questions as to how folks felt about incorporating the school votes and stuff like that into things. And there definitely was some interest in again, you know, into reducing the number of votes and how we do that process. There were some interesting things that were floated out as far as different methods or governance or whatever for voting. For one, I was kind of interesting was to have, let's just say, take the village and divide it up into, I don't know, make up a number, but like 100 districts. And so you would have 100 representatives of your village going to vote. And they would represent that smaller community within the village, which is, it was kind of interesting. I believe is it Brattleboro that does
Representative
something
town
very
meeting.
similar, like does that. And
Yep.
so I'd never heard of it, and so it was kind of interesting to have that discussion. And then in the end, they put up, I think, the 4 different
Yep.
methods, and I think and then everybody just, you know, put a sticker on whichever one they liked. And I think the way we do it now got the least votes, but the other 3 was pretty even, their distribution.
Yeah,
So
it's
it was kind of
we
interesting. So it
want
was very
something-
interesting.
We want something adjustment.
We just-
we want something
We
better,
want
but
something
we're
just
sure
not what
it
we
is
have
yet.
now. We don't know what it is, but something that we don't have right now. So anyway, so it was very informative, and like Tim said, there was working on our report to distribute that to everyone and to see what was discussed. So it was good to be part of that.
Well, you'd have, if you were to form a red, you'd have 3 budgets disappear.
Yes.
You're getting it down to one, you know, one
So
article.
we're doing
getting
our
down to
part.
One article
Well, we
instead
may be
of,
doing our part.
you know, multiple articles that we have to have.
And then the other piece was
Thank you.
anything on the fall
budgets.
conference,
The SA, the SBA.
the
Fall
VSBA conference.
Loved it, awesome, it was great. That we gotta get more from that guy. And I mean, I hope you guys look at that in terms of that conference in Atlanta, taking teachers, and then, I mean, that sounded really like data-driven decision-making. You know, they went and looked at the top 25 schools in each of the areas and just said, hey, what are they doing? Right? Most improving schools,
Right.
not the highest performing.
Yeah.
And so it looked like there's a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah.
And so how can we incorporate, you know, elements?
Bill Daggett's.
Bill
big
Daggett.
Bill
First, I
Daggett.
couldn't remember his first name.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the most, you know, the engaging like pieces. And the stuff about looping teachers from 8th to 9th
Right.
grade and stuff
That
like
was really exciting
No,
for
you
me,
know,
was that idea, actually, so,
yeah. And that you could do in the red.
yes. All right.
Okay, I gotta run.
Easier.
All right, thanks, Tim.
More easily.
Marla, do you have anything to add with the VSBA conference?
The SBA conference, I think I've mentioned it before, I think we talked at our last meeting. Biggest thing I got out of it, Jennifer, was I don't think there's gonna be a solution to the funding issue, school funding issue, but I think Rebecca Holcomb, the more I see her at meetings and the more I hear, I don't know if the word aggressive is the correct terminology, but I suspect things will change with how districts are aligned. I think it's just a matter of time. So, because they can't solve it the way it's going now, the school funding issue. And you know, you go to those things and it's kind of, in some ways it's kind of discouraging because, well, you're in these groups, when you go to these groups and these separate groups, and you're in there with people from a small district that might have only 5, 6, 7, or 8 kids in a classroom. Well, that's what's driving down the teachers per students.
Ratio.
But yet, they'll be in meetings and they are blaming Chittenden County for the way the funding issue we're in.
Right.
But yet our classrooms, we have
Capacity.
20 or more kids in the classrooms.
Or we're adding more.
Our area,
Right.
Yeah.
our area
We're not
really
defining.
isn't the issue. It's just that,
Not
you
in
know,
terms of those kinds of things, no, it's
Yeah.
not.
Well, if we form a red, they can't say that anymore, right?
That's right. They can show that we did attempt to learn.
Yeah, I think one of the, I don't remember, I wish I had continued to write it down, but I do remember one of the numbers that was put out was, is it about 4.7 staff to student in the whole state? That's the ratio?
5.7.
Was it 5.7? Okay.
students per teacher.
No, not students
All
per staff,
staff.
just
Oh,
all staff.
students
No,
per
not
staff.
per teacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that was really interesting, and it was, somebody had done a calculation that just basically raising it up to the next whole number was about 50 million. So, those are the kind of numbers that are being crunched, and we have our part to play in it, but, you know, as a whole, I think we've done a pretty good job. So,
And we have a newly elected
Yes.
legislator.
Well, and that's part of the reason I'm here, you know, because I don't know how many board meetings I'm going to be able to make after January starts. And just, this is a topic we're going to be talking about. I'm
sure. Why don't you sit up here with us? Come on up. Otherwise, it's just weird.
Yeah.
There's nobody else out there.
Lonely.
Yeah, I just wanted to come and listen. I don't remember the last time I was at the Prudential meetings. So, you know, if you have a message for me as your representative in Montpelier, as you guys are trying to do the hard job, you know, I went last week and talked to a couple of the folks at the Joint Fiscal Office just to get oriented a little bit about the budget process and how that all works, which makes me appreciate what you guys do even more. So I just wanted to kind of partly hear what was going on and just wanted to listen to what you guys have in terms of if you see things that are particular issues that you don't know how to solve, but you say this is a problem that we don't have control over, but the state does, let me know what those are, or if you have some ideas about what we need to do differently, because I think we are going to be doing something, and I just hope it's going to be a good fit for what's going on in here in Essex. So this open season, I guess, on what your thoughts are there.
No more unfunded mandates. And no more putting it in for a year and it's funded, and then the second year it drops a quarter, the third year half, and then down to 3/4. That seems to be a real trick. And I think we have a list of all those mandates that we could pass on to him, right?
We absolutely could.
Yeah.
There's a whole list that was put together by central office at our request.
Okay. Yeah, please send me that list.
It's also helpful when there's debates happening, you know, that you keep us informed. It was helpful in the past to hear, you know, so that you can get our thoughts too about the impact of sometimes some of the strategies that are bantered around and the implications or impact locally. So, you know, any time that there's something like that you have questions, please feel welcome to connect with me or attend a board meeting, whatever works in your soon-to-be very busy schedule.
Yes.
Grant is excellent at understanding the formula, our financial CEO, whatever, financial honcho.
Yeah.
He's very good at understanding that formula, and I know he has mentioned some changes that could occur that he sees from his direction, and they're very practical. So I would honestly touch base with him before too much later, because he's going into budget.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
And certainly, you know, Marla was talking about, or Michael, the staff ratio as one component in a very complex situation. But this board has been committed to saying maybe that's not where we can contribute because we're already at optimum or maximum. But what other things can we do? And hence, all our boards have talked about forming this RED study committee as far as voluntary merger is concerned, and at least studying what kind of incentives that could provide and how do we maintain some of the programs we have for our students currently. So, you know, as much as Chittenden County might not be talked about in an affirmative way, you know, all the boards have really stepped up to say, you know, we're dedicated to some time to thinking about, is there another governance structure that makes more sense? And I would only wish that others could also take on that body of work, because maybe we'd all learn a new way to govern where there was some commonality, because right now you can't govern education in the state of Vermont with everybody having different structures, and that's what's happening. So until we get some standardization in
Well, and
place.
especially when a particular governance structure doesn't necessarily have complete control over the funding of what they're governing. You know, that to me seems one of the biggest issues as I've looked at this is the people that are voting, you know, the local control isn't what a lot of people, well, it's not what it used to be, and it's not what a lot of people think it is. And by the time you guys, the amount that you actually can adjust the budget is very, very limited. You know, already. So, and those are partly decisions. Some of those are decisions that are out of your controls that are out of your hands. So,
Correct.
I think the other thing to be aware of in our district is, Judy knows the numbers better than I do, but we did have to add staff at the beginning of the year because we had, at the end of the summer or in the beginning of the school, we had a lot of English second
Language
learners move in. And again, that's another one, you have to provide the staffing. It's not a place where we can cut, and as you said, you can't touch the special ed plans. It's getting difficult.
And the English language learners that came in were newcomers, so they were new to the country, so they had no English language. So it created a need for additional resources from the board. So those are things that it's hard to anticipate, you know, that mobility rate. So those are things that we're grappling with.
We have over 20 languages spoken in this school district now.
Wow.
So,
Things they are changing.
Well, there's 2 languages spoken in my household. So
yeah.
There you
When
go.
you see the flags, there's over 30 nationalities here at Hiawatha.
Yeah.
I was noticing that.
Yeah, and each of the schools has the flags up. It's
Yeah, the
just
diversity
shows you
is
that you have
growing.
a lot of diversity coming through the system.
Absolutely.
So
So thank you so much for coming.
Well,
It's
no trouble. The
wonderful.
other thing is I had been in touch with the village trustees, and they had kind of sent me an email just saying, we have some particular priorities, you know, that it sounds like it's a little bit more formal process that they want to talk to me about. So I don't know if that's something you guys have done in the past or would like to do in terms, because again, I think this is going to be a big issue this year, and if there are, so, you know, I know I just kind of showed up when we were talking kind of informally, but if you have some more specific thoughts or you want to talk about it, again, please, you know, let me know. Probably, you know, we're both going to be very busy coming up here.
Right.
But yeah, I want to make sure that whatever's going on in Montpelier is being helpful here rather than you know, hindering. So especially, you know, if I could get that copy of some of those unfunded mandates, you think that are making things difficult.
I can send that to you electronically.
Excellent.
excellent.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for
Thank
coming
you.
Yes.
tonight. And
No trouble. Well, yeah, and I'll leave.
we'll look forward to seeing you at other meetings.
Yes, well, I hope so.
Yeah.
So I'll leave. I think I have your email, Judy.
Yeah.
So I'll give you my new legislative email, and you can just pass it around to the board, so
Okay.
everybody has my contact info. So, but if you
Great.
can't find it, you can always go to legislative website once I get sworn in January. So,
Okay, thank you.
Well, our relationships with legislators, it's very important, and we've been
Yes.
very fortunate to have good relationships with our local legislators. And so welcome and congratulations on your new
Yes.
appointment.
well, thank you very much.
All right.
Take care.
Okay, stepping back briefly to the CCSU board update. I know the 27th and the 17th meetings, we had discussions around budget. And at the meeting on the 17th, one of the things that was, one of the things that came out of the budget for the SU, or the SU assessment, that was a little unexpected for me. It was there's an increase in our portion of the assessment. And the unexpected piece of it was, not only was it due to staffing, but also because we increased the number of computers. Because we increased the number of computers, that increased our percentage of the computer, of the IT staff costs. And that's not an insignificant cost to the SU. And so that was a big driver of our increase. We made a decision on the funding for the, well, okay, yeah, for the associate superintendent, some of that savings, and made a decision on basically running a deficit for the child nutrition. And it's got to get paid off at some point. And rather than putting it off, we applied a significant portion of the associate superintendent savings to driving down that deficit. So that.
And Grant was great. He gave us, Jennifer, in case the public ever wonders, Grant gave us scenarios where our percentage could have been less. But what happened, it pushed Westford paying more. And it's just a numbers, to me, it's a numbers game. And so his methodology that he was showing us was a new methodology. It wasn't based on what he had done in the past. So because our percentage, it didn't change it. I think we were at 9%, a little over 9%. If we picked another scenario, it dropped us down to 8-point-something%. And we took the same methodology. I think the ones that were there on the CCSU board representing the Prudential Committee, we just didn't feel it was worth the hassle of changing methodology. And it wasn't quite right to do that to Westford and Midstream, you know.
But that was a direction moving forward, that the methodology would be reviewed next time.
Correct,
So
yes.
that, you know, we can see what those scenarios are sooner rather than later, and we aren't in that midstream predicament that we find ourselves. But the
Right.
budget did receive tentative approval.
Correct. And RETN was there recording that particular meeting, so anyone who wants to see the specifics of the discussion can see it.
And the superintendent's summative evaluation was completed as well.
Yes.
Yes, superintendent was evaluated.
So, good meeting was,
You're
Yes.
smiling so that
it was a good evaluation.
Okay. This is the one I always struggle with just a little bit, is the consent agenda.
Does he have to say
Marla
it all?
doesn't, so she-
But
she-
Marla does it
she doesn't.
well.
Right.
Oh, before we do consent agenda though, we have to have the announced tuition amount. I didn't see that in my org notes.
Yep, it's, I think it's 12.5.
Did I miss it?
13.5. No, it's in here.
It isn't?
Oh,
You guys didn't see it?
I
Well,
must
she
have,
didn't say anything what that was.
I didn't remember seeing it. I must have missed the page. I was looking
Which
for it.
last pages of the extra stuff, or?
The actual org.
Okay, so the attachments then.
Am I-
Oh, the tuition?
Okay,
That's right
I'll
here.
find it here. I'll find it here then.
It's right before
This is
Girls
right
on
here.
Track.
This is it right here. Okay, thank you.
14th.
That's the time where it's easier to do it online, because can't you just click
Here
on
it
it and then
is.
it brings you right to it?
So for K6, the proposed tuition would be 12,500, and for 7th and 8th, it would be 13,500.
Right.
Okay. And activity recognition, I didn't see in there, there's 3 coaches, but I didn't see how much that's gonna cost us in the budget.
That shouldn't cost anything. That is a program that is run by volunteer
Yes.
parents.
Right. Now, there was no financial allocation request. for
And it
that.
follows
It's a new
our
program.
policies and procedures.
First year,
They do
yeah.
Girls in the Run through Summit here and Fleming.
Fleming.
And then, so ADL is taking on Girls on Track. It's the next
Middle
level
school.
for the next age group.
Gotcha.
It's the same program.
Okay, so I move that we accept the consent agenda, which is composed of approving warrants, approving the meeting minutes of 10/13/14, 11/6/14, and 11/17/14, and approving the FY16 announced tuition for K through 6, $12,500, and for 7th and 8th grade, $13,500, and approve the request for the activity recognition of girls on the,
On Track.
On track.
girls on the what?
Girls on Track.
Girls on Track, and approve the letter of retirement by, do we
Susan
sta-
Plunkett-Dunning.
do we state
Yes.
the name?
Yeah.
And approve the letter of retirement by Sue Plunkett-Dunning.
Accept it with regrets.
Oh,
Or
with
happiness.
regrets.
Or happiness for her.
I will second that.
Second by Jen. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0. Okay. So next up is future agenda items.
When's
Just-
our next meeting? I'm not
Next
sure.
meeting is not
Our
scheduled
real meeting
until,
till February, right? February.
yeah, till February
So we've got
9th.
budgets.
And it's
And that's
budget
pretty
night
much,
also.
but this
So
is a
it's
separate
January
meeting.
19th.
Is
Jan-
budgets,
Yeah.
is budget
19,
meeting.
22,
The
29.
February 9th is PC, but that'll be to approve the budget, you know, that we will have had all of the meetings in January.
So we'll think about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Email you.
Yes.
You're gonna see me a lot.
Hey, Ben, just one question. Have we started a list of future agenda items for PC? That we'll just keep rolling forward as? Okay. But I mean, if anything doesn't make it on the org, or, you know, for that particular meeting, that, because if we can just, my one request is that we can just keep rolling those onto the, you know, onto the agenda, or onto this chunk, just so that we go, oh yeah, we already had that one coming to us, you know, we just couldn't fit it into this particular meeting, and we'll put it on the next one.
From talking about that from the meeting minutes we just approved,
Mm-hmm.
meeting minutes of October 13th, 2014, our future agenda items were playground funding, you know, all the questions about that, the Summit Street playground, but the funding of how playgrounds. So we talked about that tonight, Growing Kids, Essex Junction update, we did that. Science kneecaps, we discussed that. The one thing I was interested in that hasn't, I thought Tim, how he approached the graphing for Essex Junction versus how the state gave the numbers for students per teachers ratios. I didn't know if that was worth a look at in budget time, Tim's graphing, because I think that's very important to get out to the community.
Yeah, this is the pupil staff, student staff ratio.
Yeah, because you know, unless Grant approves it or it's approved from us financially that Tim's work was correct. I mean, it made sense, but I would like, I think if we do it and follow it the way the state did, I would like to show it as how we stack up to the state's numbers. I just thought that was a great comparison before budget time. And then it was just studying the to form a red.
Well, I think what we'll be talking about based on, I think where everyone is with that as far as the study is concerned, is we'll be discussing the committee, or we'll be talking about the letter and who's on the committee. That will be the next logical discussion at our next
Right.
meeting.
Right.
The who's doing
Who's
what
the makeup of the committee.
after you decide if you're going to vote. So, I mean, study.
You may have
Study.
to call
Study.
a special meeting to do it if our official Prudential committee meeting isn't until February.
March.
One of the budget meetings might have to be
Yeah.
called as a regular board meeting.
Or we might be able to tack on
Might be
to one
able-
of your budget meetings.
Right.
Any of those
You could do it
kinds
ahead of, at the start of
approving
the
your
budget,
letter that you want to send
Yeah,
out and stuff
right.
like that.
and do something the first
Yeah.
10 minutes or so, boom, this is it.
Yeah.
I
Like the
know
session from
for
this
the
point on.
future, in March, because we'll be in budgeting, we might forget it, we've got to set up the meeting with the trustees. That occurs in March, correct?
That's right, for E EJRP.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm wondering, before we meet, I would be curious maybe to hear from Jeff Carr again. Like he mentioned a park district to us at the trustees meeting. I would be interested in hearing more details about that, because if we do study to become a red, we may need to work
That
on.
may be our focus as part of this process.
Yeah, so if we could, I don't know if the trustees would be willing to take their time to do that, but I think that might be worthwhile to have on the agenda to hear Jeff Carr's suggestion of the park district.
It's also, when I was reading Brad's report, there might be an interest on this part of the board to talk about what this accreditation process is about that he's talking about now. It sounds like it's going to be a pretty in-depth undertaking, and I know I wanted to learn more as I saw his report about it. So maybe we could combine those things, because maybe the village would like to hear about
Can we,
some of that.
where is
I
the
think
report?
it-
Can we get sent that?
The
Or is
Brad
it,
Luck's
is it,
report's
is it
in your
attached in
orders.
that? Oh,
I think it's the
Yeah,
first
Brad,
thing.
his report's in, it's actually, I think the first thing's there.
Yeah.
about the accreditation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
National
think the
accreditation
growth
for
of-
rec and
Oh, I didn't know if there
parks.
was a bigger report.
No, it was
Okay.
in that part, yeah.
I think the other thing at the trustees meeting is it's important for Brad to outline the growth that department has had, and talk about strategic planning, because there's some decisions coming up and how he interfaces with the schools. I think the amount of kids that are joined in Fleming and after-school programs, and the parents that want before-school programs, there's a real need for even more help with helping the parents. So,
And just one thing I want to put out there, the winter lights are at Maple Street Park. I haven't been there to look at them yet.
Oh, you have?
But I will.
Oh.
The tree lighting is Friday, and the EJRP bonfire is during that time. I think they're doing it at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. The whole program is 6 to 9 for the tree lighting, and the bonfire is within that time, and I just can't remember
guess
specifically
what?
when.
They're looking for a volunteer to be Santa that night for an hour. Michael,
Dude.
you, Ben?
I'm busy that night. I think I'm busy that night.
You're busy that night.
Okay, any alibis? Anybody feel we missed anything? All right, well then we're adjourned.
Right?
Thank you, guys.
And you adjourned
At
at
six.
6.
Well, which clock is faster?
33.
Is slower, my clock or that one? Mine says 6:32.
6:32?